Hello everyone. Welcome to Frightening Tales. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So, before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into tonight's case. Story 1. Before stunning the world with the hijacking of a plane carrying over 500 passengers, an event that shook aviation history, Yuji Nishiwa was once a brilliant student with a deeply dedicated approach to learning and research. But few knew that his overwhelming ambition to break into the aviation industry inadvertently led him down a path of profound tragedy. Yuji Nishizawa was born on September 8, 1970 in Tokyo. His father worked at the intellectual property office while his mother was a homemaker. Alongside his parents, Nishizawa lived with his grandmother and older brother, a family of 5 residing in Tokyo's Ataguard. With an immense passion for aviation, Nishizawa dreamed of a career in the field, but faced repeated rejections when applying for jobs. One day, he stumbled upon a security flaw at a local airport. A reckless idea took root in his mind to fly a plane under Tokyo's Rainbow Bridge, just like in a flight simulation game. This idea set the stage for a shocking crime, and on July 23, 1999. As a child, Eugene Nishizawa was a well-behaved and academically gifted student. Yet, he was reserved, not particularly sociable, and his introverted nature left him with few friends. After completing elementary school, Nishizawa enrolled at Maozashi High School, a reputable private institution in Tokyo's Nurama ward. During this time, Nishizawa developed a fascination with trains and planes. He devoured TV programs and books about these machines, gaining a deep understanding of their mechanics. On weekends, he'd explore various train routes and models, often visiting airport areas to closely observe planes taking off and landing. When he reached university, Yuji Nishizawa was accepted into Heido Subsushi University with outstanding grades. Located in Tokyo's Kokuritsu district, this national university is among Japan's elite. Throughout his university years, Nishizawa's passion for aviation remained unrelenting as he studied planes day and night. With few friends, he often secluded himself in his dorm, playing air-based simulation games or poring over aviation books. During the summer break of his sophomore year, Yuji Nishizawa, fueled by his aviation obsession, took a job at Haneda Airport as a baggage handler. He used his earnings to buy plane tickets, experiencing various airlines firsthand. In just a short period, he flew over 70 times, meticulously noting his impressions of each flight in a journal. Not stopping there, Nishizawa spent all his free time studying planes, reading books, or playing flight simulators. His ultimate dream was to become a real pilot. After graduating, he repeatedly applied to 3 airlines, dedicating immense effort to prepare for their recruitment tests, firmly believing he'd be accepted. Harsh reality struck when all 3 airlines rejected Nishizawa, leaving him deeply disappointed and disillusioned. In 1994, at 24, he graduated from Heidatsubushi University and began working at JR Freight Company. The job had little to do with aviation, and given Miss Hazawa's introverted personality, he found no passion in it. Still, he worked to make a living. After 2 years, Miss Hawa quit Jr. Freight. Unable to cope with workplace relationships due to his reclusive nature. For the next few years, he remained unemployed, staying at home. During this time, he immersed himself daily in flight simulation games and aviation books, waiting for an opportunity to break into the industry. One day while studying an aviation book, Nishizawa came across a layout of Haneda Airport. Having worked there as a baggage handler, he immediately noticed a glaring security vulnerability. From the layout, Nishizawa recalled a route at the airport that allowed staff to bypass security checks and head straight to the boarding gates. If exploited, this path could enable someone to bring prohibited items onto a plane. This startling discovery excited him. He believed that reporting this flaw to the airport or relevant authorities might earn him a foothold in the aviation industry. To test his theory, Yuji Nishizawa bought a plane ticket and followed the route he'd identified. Sure enough, he evaded the security checkpoint and reached the boarding gate. He then drafted a detailed report outlining the issue and proposing solutions to fix the vulnerability. He sent the report to Japan's Ministry of Transport, the Tokyo Aviation Bureau, Haneda Airport, and one of its managing entities, Japan Airport Terminal Ku, Senate Subo Airport, hoping to gain recognition. Upon receiving the report, Haneda Airport's management held a meeting. Discussions revealed that addressing the flaw would require not only enhanced security, but also annual infrastructure upgrades. Given practical constraints, the security concern Nishizawa raised didn't receive much attention from Haneda's management. He waited at home for a month, but received no response. Frustrated by the lack of acknowledgement, Nishizawa visited Haneda Airport to check on the issue and found the security flaws unrisked. When he called the relevant departments, they told him they were still discussing the matter. Desperate not to miss his chance to enter the aviation industry, he directly asked about job openings, only to be informed that the airport had sufficient staff and no plans to hire. This infuriated Nishizawa. He demanded at least a research fee for the time he'd invested in the report, only to be outright rejected. His dream of breaking into aviation shattered completely. From this rejection, a sinister plan formed in Yuji Nishizawa's mind. If the airport didn't value his discovery, he'd make them face the consequences. In his flight simulation game, he was tackling the toughest level, flying under the Rainbow Bridge, spanning Tokyo Bay. The bridge's construction began in 1987 and finished in 1993. It stretches 798 m in total with a main span of 570 m and a height of 52 m from the deck to the ground, divided into two levels. Its stunning architecture and scenic surroundings often feature in films and TV shows. In reality, flying a large commercial plane under the Rainbow Bridge is an immense challenge. Yuji Nishizawa didn't just want to achieve this in a game. He wanted to do it for real. Thus, he began meticulously planning a deranged scheme to hijack a plane. Returning to the crime, on a day in July 1999, 29-year-old Yuji Nishizawa prepared a suitcase packed with items essential for his criminal plan. He told his mother he was traveling to Hokkaido, but she noticed his recent odd behavior. So, while he was out shopping, she secretly checked his bag. Inside, she found a zip tie and a sharp knife. Nishizawa had previously contemplated suicide, leading his mother to fear he was in distress again. She hid the knife When Nishizawa returned and noticed his bag missing, he confronted her. She pleaded with him not to do anything drastic and to share what was troubling him. But by then, Nishizawa had finalized his plan. He assaulted his mother to retrieve the bag and fled the house. Little did Yuji Nishizawa's mother know that after leaving that day, her son would orchestrate an event that would shock Japan. On Friday, July 23, 1999, Yuji Nishizawa arrived at Haneda Airport with luggage containing tools for his crime. He approached the airline counter, using a false identity to purchase 2 plane tickets. The first was for a flight from Haneda to Atami Airport in Osaka, departing at 6:45 a.m. The second was from Haneda to Nuko's Airport in Hokkaido, departing at 10:55 a.m. After receiving boarding passes, passengers at Haneda Airport typically check their luggage and pass through security. Staff rigorously screen each passenger before they can board, ensuring no prohibited items are carried on. Only after clearance can passengers enter the waiting area. Checked luggage is stored separately from the passenger cabin, allowing some items like knives to be transported in checked bags, even if banned from carry-ons. At 6:45 a.m. that day, Yuji Nishizawa boarded the flight from Haneda. About an hour later, the plane landed at Atami Airport in Osaka. There, Nishizawa retrieved his checked luggage and purchased a return ticket to Haneda. Following his plan, he checked his luggage again, passed security, and proceeded to the boarding gate. Upon returning to Haneda, Nishizawa studied the layout he'd brought. It showed the airport's 2 levels, the first for arrivals, the second for the departure lounge. A staircase used internally by staff connected directly to the lounge on the 2nd floor. Flight attendants also used this route. As a sophomore, Yuji Nishizawa had worked as a baggage handler at Haneda, so he knew of this staircase. It was the critical security flaw he'd reported. Yet the airport had dismissed his concerns. If a knife were hidden in checked luggage, he could retrieve it upon arrival, bypass the crowd, and slip through the internal staircase to the lounge without passing security again. Using this loophole, Yuji Nishizawa collected his luggage and blended into the crowd, heading to a restroom. There, he changed his hairstyle and put on glasses to avoid recognition. Upon exiting, he donned opaque white gloves to prevent sweaty hands and avoid leaving fingerprints. From his bag, Nishizawa retrieved the knife, concealed it on his person, and discarded the bag. In his report, he'd stressed the need for heightened security at the internal staircase. Yet, the airport had only placed a staff-only sign at the entrance, leaving the path accessible. Exploiting this vulnerability, Yuji Nishizawa reached the 2nd floor lounge via the staff entrance. Everything went according to plan. He prepared to board All Nippon Airways Flight 61, departing from Haneda to Nato Airport in Hokkaido at 10:55 a.m. All Nippon Airways Flight 61 was operated by a Boeing 747-400, a heavy aircraft with a lower cargo hold and an upper passenger cabin. The passenger cabin was split into 2 levels with more seats on the lower deck. The cockpit was located at the front of the upper deck. The flight carried 503 passengers and 14 crew members. The captain of the flight was Naoyuki Nagashima, 51 years old, born into a family with a deep aviation legacy. His older and younger brothers were also captains. Nagashima was a seasoned pilot with over 20,000 hours of flight experience. At 11:21 a.m. that day, flight attendants reminded passengers to fasten their seat belts. The plane taxied onto the runway and took off safely. 2 minutes later, while still climbing, Yuji Nishizawa suddenly unbuckled his seat belt, pulled a knife from his jacket, and stood up, heading toward a flight attendant at the rear of the plane. Witnessing this, several passengers screamed in terror. Though equally frightened, the flight attendants had been trained to handle hijackings. One attendant mustered the courage to ask Miss Hawa to return to his seat and fasten his seat belt. Instead, Nishizawa grabbed the attendant by the collar, pressed the knife to her throat, and forced her toward the cockpit. Meanwhile, another attendant urgently contacted the pilots via the plane's intercom, reporting the hijacking threat. Upon receiving the alert, Captain Naoki Nagashima initiated the standard hijacking protocol. First, he checked the plane's fuel reserves to determine if there was enough to reach a destination the hijacker might demand. Next, he placed the map in an easily accessible spot, avoiding any actions like reaching for the map in front of the hijacker that might raise suspicion. Nagashima also removed his tie to prevent the hijacker from using it as a weapon. After these swift preparations, he notified air traffic control of the hijacking and handed control of the planes to his two co-pilots, Koga and Yuko, before standing up and heading to the rear. Peering through the cockpit doors peepfully to assess the situation, Nagashima saw the hijacker holding a knife to the attendant's throat, his eyes blazing with fury. Nishizawa shouted demands to open the cockpit door. Visibly agitated, the door could be opened from the inside as the captain held a key. Nagashima faced a critical decision. Opening the door would give the hijacker control of the plane, but refusing risked the attendant's life. After a brief deliberation, the captain chose to open the cockpit door. 11 minutes after ANA Flight 61 took off, hijacker Yuji Nishizawa entered the cockpit. He threatened the co-pilots while staring curiously at the cockpit's electronic equipment. Surrounded by so many instruments, Nishizawa, experiencing a real cockpit for the first time, was visibly thrilled. Moments later, he demanded the captain change course to Yokosa in Kanagawa Prefecture. The flight's original destination was Hokkaido, but at that moment, the plane was over Chiba Prefecture. Nagashima had to make a wide turn to redirect toward Yokosa. Investigations later revealed the Boeing 747 was flying at 37,000 feet, 11,200 m. Nishizawa ordered the pilots to descend to just 3,000 feet, 914 m. At such a low altitude, the plane risked colliding with mountains. A heavy aircraft like the Boeing 747 flying so low was extremely dangerous, but Nishizawa's agitation left Nagashima no room to object. He reluctantly complied, descending to the perilous altitude. Minutes later, Nishizawa demanded they fly to Ishizuima, an island 60 kilometers south of Kanagawa formed by underwater volcanic activity. The hijacking unfolded abruptly. To avoid panic, the crew didn't inform all passengers. Only about 80 on the upper deck were aware of the situation. Over 400 passengers on the lower deck remained oblivious. Soon, some noticed Mount Fuji through the windows, an impossible sight on the planned route to Hokkaido, coupled with the unusually low altitude. They assumed the plane had encountered an issue. requiring a temporary detour. This assumption calmed the passengers. 17 minutes after takeoff, Nishizawa expelled the two co-pilots from the cockpit and locked the door. He then sat in the co-pilot's seat, leaving only himself and Captain Nagashima in the cockpit. Smaller aircraft often fly over Izuoshima to avoid collisions. Nagashima asked Nishizawa if they could ascend slightly, but he refused. The Boeing 747 has dual control yokes that operate in sync. Moving one automatically moves the other. Nishizawa gripped the co-pilot's yoke, eager to feel the thrill of flying, but Nagashima held the main yoke tightly, preventing the hijacker from taking control. Enraged, Nishizawa recklessly jerked the yoke, causing the plane to lurch dangerously. Soon, the plane reached the skies above Izuoshima. Nishizawa then demanded they head to Yoko Air Base. Unable to predict the hijacker's next move, Nagashima secretly activated the autopilot, setting the plane to maintain a predetermined altitude and course. Meanwhile, on the upper deck, flight attendants moved elderly passengers, women, and children to the lower deck. Only about 40 passengers remained upstairs, including 53-year-old Junji Yamanoi, a pilot himself. Yamanoi and another pilot were traveling to Hokkaido for other flight duties. Never expecting to encounter a hijacking, Yamanoi had noticed the hijacker during check-in at the airport, but hadn't anticipated such a dangerous act. He realized that without swift action, a catastrophic accident could kill many. Consulting with the crew and other passengers, he devised a plan. Since the hijacker was alone, armed only with a knife, a coordinated rush into the cockpit could overpower him. Inside the cockpit, Miss Hazawa grew furious at his inability to take control. He pulled out his knife, threatening Nagashima to hand over the controls. Nagashima knew the plane was flying at a dangerously low altitude. If an inexperienced person took over, it could crash immediately. Yet, Nishizawa was unrelenting. His goal in hijacking the plane was to fulfill his lifelong dream of flying it himself. 23 minutes after takeoff, Nishizawa's anger boiled over. He stabbed Nagashima in the chest. The autopilot remained active. So despite Nishizawa's efforts, he couldn't turn the yoke. Though he frequently played flight simulators, a real plane was vastly different. Nishizawa, who had never undergone formal flight training, began to panic. He started pressing buttons chaotically, inadvertently disabling the autopilot. 40 minutes after takeoff, Miss Hazawa gained full control of the plane. It began shaking violently, alarming passengers. He then embarked on a reckless challenge, flying under the Rainbow Bridge. To do so, he further lowered the altitude, flying dangerously close to the ground. The plane carried about 10,000 L of fuel, flying so low risk to crash, endangering not only those on board, but also people on the ground. A crash in a populated area would have catastrophic consequences. Ground cameras captured ANA Flight 61 flying at a low altitude. Onlookers below stopped to watch in disbelief. On the upper deck, pilot Yamanoi Jingi warned that the plane was descending rapidly. If it continued, it would crash. He rallied the group. The hijacker had only a knife, and a coordinated attack could stop him. Yamanoi vowed to take responsibility for any consequences. He instructed the crew to retrieve the cockpit door key. At that moment, a cockpit alarm blared. The plane was critically close to the ground and would crash without immediate action. Unable to wait, Yamanoi Junji and others broke down the cockpit door and dragged Eugenie Nishikawa out. Several passengers pinned him down as he struggled, shouting that he wanted to fly under the Rainbow Bridge. They used belts and ties to restrain him, securing him to a passenger seat. The plane was now just 200 m from the ground on the verge of crashing. Through the windows, passengers could see houses below. A crash here would be devastating. In the cockpit, Yamano Junji immediately took control, pulling the plane upward, but the aircraft lost speed, requiring an engine thrust boost. With both hands on the yoke, Yamanoi couldn't spare one to adjust the throttle. At the last second, the throttle automatically engaged. Before losing consciousness, Captain Nagashima had activated the autopilot. When the system detected the speed loss, it automatically increased thrust, averting disaster. Yamanoi Junji handed control back to co-pilots Koga and Yuko. He then made a brief announcement over the intercom, explaining that the plane had been hijacked, but the perpetrator was now subdued and they were returning to Haneda Airport. As Yamanoi finished, passengers erupted in applause. A truly unprecedented experience. Among them was a doctor who rushed to the cockpit to aid the captain. But sadly, Nagashima could not be saved. 51 minutes after takeoff, Flight 61 landed safely at Haneda Airport. In that time, over 500 people on board had faced a harrowing battle between life and death. Thanks to Yamano Junji's quick thinking and the collective effort of the passengers, everyone else survived. Upon landing, Yuji Nishiwa was arrested by police. Waiting at the airport. Though safe, passengers were still shaken, recounting the ordeal to reporters. One passenger documented the entire incident on paper, providing valuable evidence for the investigation. The hijacking drew intense public and media attention. The legal proceedings stretched nearly 6 years. In April 2005, the Tokyo court delivered its verdict. Yuji Nishizawa was convicted of murder, hijacking, and related charges. However, a defense-led evaluation revealed he had Asperger syndrome. Due to signs of impaired behavioral control, he was sentenced to life imprisonment instead of the death penalty. The incident prompted serious reflection within Japan's aviation authorities. At Haneda Airport, the security flaw was thoroughly addressed. Management increased security personnel. At staff and passenger exits, installed advanced equipment to prevent passengers from re-entering after retrieving luggage, and enhanced surveillance to prevent similar incidents. Captain Nagashima had faced the hijacker with calm resolve, refusing to easily relinquish control of the plane. He did everything to ensure the safety of passengers and crew, ultimately sacrificing his life. Japanese Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi and Transport Minister Toshiro Nikai awarded Nagashima a Medal of Honor recognizing his courageous sacrifice. Story 2. This story we're about to explore unfolds in the bustling Shibuya district, where the modern pulse of life intertwines with the timeless charm of Yoyogi Park. Amid the vibrant chaos of Tokyo, a luxurious high-rise apartment stands tall, home to countless families. Among them was a couple admired by many, the Sambashis. Sambashi Ishuker, a gifted financial analyst, always exuded elegance and confidence. By his side was Sambashi Kawarai, a devoted wife who nurtured their cozy home. They were the epitome of an ideal couple, their lives seemingly brimming with happiness. But in 2006, a sudden tragedy struck, shattering the peace of their small family. What happened? On Friday, December 15, 2006, Shibuya police station received a young woman who arrived in a panic, reporting that her husband had been missing for 3 days and pleading for help in finding him. Sensing her extreme distress, officers calmed her down and asked her to recount the events. The woman introduced herself as Sambashi Kawarai, 32 years old. Her husband, Sambashi Yucker, was 30. She explained that in the early hours of December 12, 3 days prior, her husband returned home drunk. After she nagged him, they argued. In a fit of anger, he stormed out. At the time, she was too upset to stop him. They'd had disputes before, but he always made amends first. This time, however, he didn't. 3 days had passed with no word from him. Fearing for his safety, she came to the police for assistance. From the information gathered, the missing Sambashi Yuzuker was born in Kitushu and studied at Chu University's Faculty of Law. After graduating, he worked at a law firm in Tokyo, earning 1,000 Japanese yen per hour, about $8.50. In 2025, at a social gathering, Yucker met Corey, 2 years a senior, and an employee at Marubeni Corporation, a renowned Japanese company. Their relationship blossomed quickly, and they soon began living together. After a year of cohabitation, they married. Yucker's modest income meant Koori primarily supported the household. But 2 years into their marriage, at 29, Yucker landed a job at Morgan Stanley's Japan branch. As a financial analyst, earning an annual salary of 13 million Japanese yen, about 110,000 US in 2025. With his increased income, the couple moved into a luxury apartment in Tamaga Shibuya ward near Yogi Park on the 10th floor. Corey then quit her job to become a homemaker. Their life appeared idyllic. Yet, no one could have foreseen that a single argument would lead to Yucker never returning home. Police contacted Yucker's company to inquire about his whereabouts, but they reported he'd been absent for days, and they didn't know where he was. Just the day before, the company had promoted him to department head, but they couldn't reach him to hand over his duties. Suspecting the promotion might be linked to his disappearance, police investigated his workplace. They found Yucker was well regarded by colleagues with no apparent work conflicts. Next, police reached out to Yucker's parents and acquaintances, but all said they hadn't heard from him in a while and didn't know his location. At around 8 a.m. the following day, Shinjuku Police Station in Tokyo received a report from an office worker. He'd found a suspicious plastic bag stained with dark red on a street near Tokyo College of Foreign Languages. Police immediately arrived and cordoned off the area. Inside the double-layered plastic bag was a headless torso missing its left arm and right hand with no lower body. The victim was unclothed, a man around 30 years old. The crude cuts suggested the body had been dismembered with a tool like a saw. Mud on the remains indicated the victim might have been buried before being dumped here. No items at the scene could identify the victim, nor were the missing body parts found. The victim's identity remained unknown. Forensic analysis determined the victim had died within the past week, though the exact time and cause couldn't be confirmed. The discovery site was near Kabukicho, a notorious red light district. Behind its shops, criminal gangs often operated. Shinjuku had seen many such cases. Dismemberment was a common tactic used by gangs to intimidate rivals and complicate victim identification. Suspecting gang-related conflict, police investigated missing persons reports from the past week. Soon, Shinjuku police noticed a report filed the previous day in Shibuya. Sambashi Yuzuker, 30, whose disappearance aligned with the victim's estimated time of death. Shinjuku and Shibuya police then collaborated, visiting Yuzuker's home for more information. Yuzuker's wife, Kori, provided details. He was 166 centimeters tall, slim, with a surgical scar on the right side of his chest. However, the Shinjuku victim had no scars, and 82 centimeters chest, muscular arms, and a tall, robust build. It seemed this victim wasn't Sambashi Yuzuker. A week later, another clue emerged. Around 3 p.m. in Kamiyama, Shibuya Ward, a woman named Ms. A was walking her Shiba Inu. Passing a house's garden, the dog suddenly stopped and barked incessantly toward it. Ms. tried to pull the leash, but the dog broke free, darting into the garden. Fearing she'd disturbed the homeowner, she hurried after it. The house was large, but appeared long abandoned, its garden gate lock broken. The dog easily nudged it open. Inside, the garden was overgrown with weeds. 7 m from the entrance, the dog barked and wagged its tail around something on the ground. Approaching Mise turned pale with horror, a lower body unclothed, emitting a foul odor. After composing herself, she shakily called the police. Shibuya police quickly arrived. Examination revealed the victim was male with jagged abdominal wounds likely caused by a saw. Based on decomposition, he'd been dead about 2 weeks. The legs had soil on them, unclear if it was from the garden. Recalling the recent Shinjuku case, police suspected a connection. Forensic experts compared the Shinjuku torso with the Shibuya lower body. Through DNA and other analyses, they confirmed the parts belonged to the same person. The victim was tall and robust, likely 175 to 184 centimeters, with no external wounds or scars, missing the head and key fingers. Identification remained elusive. However, police noted a suspicious detail. The lower body was found just 500 meters from Sambashi Yuzuker's home. Was this merely a coincidence? Initially, Sambashi Yuzuker's wife described him as short and slim, 166 centimeters tall with a scar. Yet, the victim was at least 175 centimeters, robust, and scar-free. Despite the mismatch in physical traits, police still suspected a connection between the two. With lingering questions, police revisited Yuzuker's home. This time, they noticed changes in the apartment. It was under renovation. Wallpaper stripped, most furniture draped in white sheets. But with the new year approaching, such home improvements seemed normal. When questioned, Kori stuck to her original statement, insisting the victim's traits didn't match her husband's and angrily asserting he couldn't have been harmed. Police shifted their questions, asking if Yuzuker had any enemies. Kori claimed he'd never had conflicts with anyone, though he'd once accrued debt as a student due to a pachinko addiction. He later secured a good job and paid it off. She couldn't imagine who might hold a grudge against him. This visit yielded little, but investigators felt something was off. Next, they tried contacting others who knew Yucker to uncover leads. Unfortunately, it was late December, and his friends and colleagues were reluctant to discuss troubling matters so close to the new year, a time to avoid bad omens, preferring to talk after the holidays. After persistent efforts, police found someone willing to speak immediately. Tanaka, 45, a senior colleague of Yucker's. Yucker had worked part-time at a law firm after university, where Tanaka was an associate. Tanaka had helped Yucker land a job at a financial firm, and the two maintained a good relationship. Tanaka was deeply concerned about Yucker's disappearance and shared much about their connection. He described Yucker as highly competent and outgoing at work. During the conversation, investigators had a sudden idea and asked Tanaka to describe Yucker's appearance. After a moment's thought, Tanaka said Yucker was tall, around 180 centimeters, had played American football since childhood, and had a muscular build. Police pressed further, asking if Yucker had tattoos or scars, particularly on his chest. Tanaka recalled their trips to hot springs together, noting Yucker had no tattoos or scars that he'd seen. After the interview, police quickly reviewed Yucker's medical records and found no history of chest surgery. This gave them a critical lead. Yucker's wife, Kawuri, had likely lied. To confirm their theory, police contacted Yucker's parents and requested their cooperation for a DNA test. Results soon confirmed the victim was indeed Sambashi Yucker. Kawi had deliberately provided false details about her husband, significantly hindering the investigation. Reflecting on prior interactions, police recall Kawuri's extreme distress when reporting Ishuker missing, seemingly genuinely worried for his safety. Yet, her actions, renovating the apartment while his fate was unknown, were highly suspicious. Police deepened their investigation into Yucker's case. His home was in a high-end apartment complex with tight security. Entry required a magnetic card, and the main lobby had surveillance cameras. Investigators visited the building's management office requesting card swipe data and footage from December 12. They discovered that at 3:50 a.m. that day, Yucker returned alone, stumbling as if drunk. After entering the elevator, he didn't reappear on camera. Police asked the manager if the building had other exits. The manager mentioned an emergency exit inside the management office, monitored 24/7 with any opening logged by the system. The door would auto-open during a fire, but otherwise remain closed. After checking, police confirmed the emergency exit hadn't been opened on December 12. This gave them reason to believe Corey had lied. Her husband likely never left the apartment that day. During the investigation, a colleague close to Yucker, referred to as Mr. B, proactively contacted police to inquire about the case's progress. While police withheld details, they seized the opportunity to ask if he'd noticed anything unusual at Yucker's home. Mr. B said nothing stood out except that Kawuri had once called the company's HR department to demand Yucker's urine bonus. HR declined, noting Yucker was still missing and the situation unresolved. Police then reviewed the building surveillance footage from the days following December 12th. At 10 p.m. on December 15th, Kowori, dressed in sportswear, was seen dragging a large suitcase out of the elevator. 4 hours later, she returned via card swipe. Still in the same outfit, but without the suitcase. 15 minutes later, she exited the elevator again, this time pushing a cart with a large cardboard box. 20 minutes after that, she returned empty-handed. From these clues, police traced a black taxi. The driver and trip data confirmed that at 10:05 p.m. that night, he picked up Kowori at the building with a large suitcase. She requested to go to Nishi Shinjuku. When the taxi reached a street near train tracks in Nishi Shinjuku, the driver, unable to ignore a strange smell, asked, "What was in the suitcase?" Kowori immediately demanded to get out. Initially, the driver thought she'd take a night bus in Shinjuku, but her abrupt exit mid-journey raised his suspicions, though he complied. After viewing the footage, the driver confirmed the woman on camera was his passenger that night. This gave police grounds to suspect the suitcase contained Yuker's upper body. Discovered the next day, a month after the case began, police returned to Yuker's home, arrested Kowori for murder, and searched the apartment. Compared to their last visit, the home had changed dramatically. Walls freshly painted, floors replaced, furniture gone, except for a few clothes. The space was eerily empty, making it hard to imagine how Kowori had lived there in recent days. On the balcony, investigators noticed a long cabinet on the floor, its door removed and set aside. Inside, it was filled with black soil. They collected a sample in a sealed plastic bag. Forensic tests revealed it was common gardening soil, mixed with a dark red substance. DNA analysis confirmed the red liquid belonged to Sambashi Yuzuker. Based on the evidence, the apartment was likely the primary crime scene. Faced with overwhelming proof, Kowori finally confessed, recounting the entire incident. At 4 a.m. on December 12th, Yuka returned home drunk. Kowori wanted to discuss divorce, but they quickly became heated and argued. Yuka then went to the bedroom. By 6 a.m., as dawn approached, Kowori, still awake, felt her anger surge. She grabbed a wine bottle from the bedroom and struck her half-conscious husband repeatedly, only stopping after several blows. In his daze, she thought she heard him murmur, "Why?" before he went still. Once she calmed down, Kowori realized the gravity of her crime and was at a loss for what to do. Sure enough, at 9 a.m. that day, Yuker's company called multiple times due to his unexplained absence, but Kowori didn't dare answer. The next day, his colleague, Mr. B, called to ask if she knew Yuker's whereabouts. She claimed ignorance. Perhaps sensing her somber tone, Mr. B offered to visit. Kowori felt terrified, but fearing suspicion, she couldn't refuse and reluctantly agreed, scheduling Mr. B's visit for the weekend. After hanging up, she began devising a plan. Since committing the act the previous day, her husband's body had remained on the bed in the bedroom. Though it was winter and the temperature was low, she knew the body would soon start to smell if left for a few more days. With Mr. B's visit looming, she decided she had to move Yuker out of the apartment. Kowori with her slender frame couldn't move Yuker's muscular body alone. After a failed attempt, she decided to dismember it. On the third day after the crime, she went out to buy a handsaw, a large suitcase, a simple cart, and a waterproof tarp. She also purchased soil. To avoid suspicion, she bought the gardening soil from 2 different stores. First, 8 small 15L bags, then 2 large 80L bags. With everything ready, Corey got to work at home. She laid a cabinet in the bedroom flat on the floor, door facing up, lined it with a waterproof tarp, and poured soil into the bottom and sides, creating a makeshift workbench of earth. Once set up, she placed her husband's body in the cabinet and began the grim task. As the saw moved back and forth, the dark red blood seeped into the soil, sparing her much of the cleanup effort. When finished, she buried the parts in the soil to slow decomposition. That day, Corey checked Yuck's phone and laptop, discovering an email from his company announcing his promotion to department head with an annual salary increase of 2 million Japanese yen, about $17,000 in 2025. His year-end bonus would also be paid on the 9th of the following month. Seeing this, Corey decided to report him missing, thinking she could later claim the money. At 9 a.m. on December 15th, Corey went to the police station near her apartment, reporting Yucker's disappearance with a worried expression. That evening, she dug up his upper body from the soil, wrapped it in 2 layers of white plastic bags, placed it in the suitcase, and planned to dump it near the train tracks in Nishi Shinjuku. At 10 p.m., Corey called a taxi. On the way, the driver noticed a strange smell, prompting her to hurriedly get out. She dragged the suitcase on foot, but worried the rolling wheels would draw attention, stopped after a short distance. Beyond the roadside greenery was the J.R. Yamanote line tracks bordered by a steel fence. Lacking the strength to toss the bag over the fence onto the tracks, she left it in the greenery. She discarded the empty suitcase at a nearby intersection. The next morning, a homeless person found the suitcase. Returning to the apartment by taxi at 2 a.m., Kawi was too tense to sleep. She then retrieved Yucker's lower body from the soil, placed it in a large cardboard box, and wheeled it out on the cart. Her earlier experience made her wary of taking another taxi. In the quiet night, the cart's noise was louder than she'd expected. Reaching Kamiyama, she didn't dare go further. After scanning the area, she spotted an abandoned house by the road, its garden gate unlocked and easy to open. She wheeled the cart into the garden, dumped the box, and later discarded the empty cart and box at a garbage site. The next morning, the white plastic bag in the roadside greenery near the tracks was discovered. A day later, police visited Corey to ask about her husband's description. After they left, she dug up his head, still buried in the soil, placed it in a travel bag, and took a train to Machida, 25 kilometers away. Arriving after dark, she carefully avoided others, heading to a secluded grassy area in Saragaya Park. There, she dug a 35 centimeters hole and buried Yucker's head. Back home, she disposed of the left arm and right hand along with other household waste in a low-traffic area near the apartment. Even after handling everything, Corey remained uneasy and decided to thoroughly clean the apartment to erase any traces. On December 22, she scheduled wallpaper and flooring replacements and took a part-time job at a cafe to address her financial needs. During this period, many tried contacting Yucker. His phone was flooded with missed calls and unread messages. On Christmas Eve, after her cafe shift, Corey returned home and used Yucker's phone to text his parents and some acquaintances, saying he needed time to rest and they shouldn't worry. In the following days, when not working at the cafe, Corey busied herself with home renovations. On January 4th, she packed the bedroom's blankets, sheets, and mattress, sending them to her hometown with a note. "Please burn them for me." Looking at the empty room, Corey felt calmer, but a lingering unease kept her on edge. On January 10th, she called Yucker's company again, asking why the year-end bonus hadn't been paid. That afternoon, police officially arrested her. Based on her confession, they recovered the head buried in the park and the hands in the garbage. The bedding sent to her hometown was left unclaimed at her parents' old address. They had moved elsewhere. Forensic experts examined the head, finding 8 wounds from a blunt object. Concluding the cause of death was traumatic brain injury. When asked why the arms weren't dismembered the same way, Cora explained that after cutting the left arm, she was too exhausted and handled the right arm more simply. When questioned about her motive, Corey suddenly broke down, sobbing as she recounted painful events from her past. Corey, born Kukikori in July 1974 in Niigata City, Niigata Prefecture, was the eldest of 3 children in a well-off family. Her father ran a printing company called Gyochi H. Kojio and provided a comfortable life. However, her father was strict, especially with Koori as the eldest daughter. To prevent her from dating early, he enrolled her in all girls' middle and high schools of his choosing. He frequently disciplined her, molding her into a poised and intelligent woman, hoping she'd become a flight attendant and ideally marry a foreigner. As high school graduation approached and the university entrance exams loomed, her father insisted she attend another women's university. This time, Corey fiercely resisted. Her father had controlled nearly every aspect of her life, punishing her if she disobeyed, even forbidding her from crying when hurt. She longed to break free, but her rebellion failed. Cora was forced to comply, enrolling in the English department at Chiruri University, a prestigious women's university in Japan. Many viewed Chiruri graduates as having an air of elegance. Her father was delighted when she was accepted, giving her a monthly allowance of 400,000 Japanese yen, about $3,400 in 2025, far more than her classmates. Though she couldn't choose her university, Corey finally lived away from her father. With this money, she enjoyed newfound freedom, splurging on designer goods. During university, she also interned at Marubeni Corporation for a few months. After graduating at 24, Kowuri followed her father's wishes and applied to be a flight attendant, but was rejected. Her father, furious, demanded she return home to find work. Corey refused even after he cut her allowance, choosing to stay in Tokyo. To support herself, she worked as a hostess in nightclubs, continuing her lavish spending. During this time, she met a wealthy man in his 50s, the chairman of a company. He was gentle, attentive, and generous, giving her 2 million Japanese yen monthly, about $17,000. In 2025, 4 years later, he grew tired of her, ending the relationship and introducing her to the son of another wealthy friend. That relationship also ended after some time. Losing her wealthy benefactor, Corey's lifestyle took a sharp decline, but she refused to settle for an ordinary life. She attended lavish parties, falsely claiming to be a full-time Marubeni employee to attract new opportunities. At one such event, 28-year-old Corey met Sambashi Yucker, 2 years her junior. They began dating and soon moved in together. Yucker, unaware of her past, found her refined and told friends she was his destiny. The next year, a health check revealed Corey was 2 months pregnant, but their finances were strained. Yucker still had unpaid loans, and Corey felt they couldn't afford a child, telling him she didn't want to keep it. Yucker, however, pleaded with her, using all his money to buy an engagement ring, promising to find a better job and begging her to keep the baby. They married, but with little money, they skipped a wedding ceremony, hosting only a simple meal with close family and friends. None of Corey's family attended. Shortly after the marriage, Yucker abandoned the bar exam and worked for various financial firms. One day, he passed the final interview at a company, excitedly sharing the news with Corey. She, however, revealed she had already aborted the pregnancy. From that moment, their marriage began to deteriorate. 2 years into their marriage, Yucker joined Morgan Stanley's Japan branch, earning 13 million Japanese yen annually, about 110,000 US. In 2025, after saving some money, they moved to a luxury apartment near Yogi Park. Though their living standards improved, their relationship remained cold. By chance, Yucker discovered Corey's affair. Enraged, he confined her at home for 2 days, subjecting her to verbal abuse and cutting off her credit cards. Corey eventually escaped to her parents' home for help. But her father coldly blamed her, saying she deserved her situation and must deal with it herself. With no other choice, Corey temporarily stayed with her lover, referred to as Mr. Days later. Yucker tracked her down, assaulted her, and broke her nose. Mr. C called the police, and Corey was taken to a shelter for protection. Many urged her to divorce, and she secretly began planning to do so. Mr. C, a lawyer, advised her, helping her draft an agreement stating that if the marriage later failed due to Yucker's fault, he'd pay her at least $36 million Japanese yen, about $35,000. In 2025, Mr. C explained that despite Corey's infidelity causing the domestic abuse, if Yusuke signed the agreement, it would legally signify reconciliation. If Yusuke later abused her again or cheated, Corey could claim the compensation upon divorce. During the subsequent reconciliation process, Corey presented the agreement as Mr. C advised and Yucker signed it, but their reconciliation was superficial. Corey began squandering Yucker's salary on luxury items, while Yucker increasingly avoided coming home. Their marriage steeped in tension. Noticing Yucker's absence, Corey secretly hired a private investigator to follow him. After a few months, she learned he was also having an affair. The investigator provided photos of Yucker with his lover. Corey held off acting, gathering more evidence to file for divorce and claim her compensation. By December 2006, the investigator gave Corey audio recordings of Yucker speaking tenderly with his lover about their future. The words ignited Corey's fury, solidifying her resolve to divorce. At 4 a.m. on December 12, after a date with his lover, Yucker returned home drunk. Corey confronted him, presenting the evidence and demanding a divorce. Yucker, enraged, tore up the photos, claiming he had proof of Corey's affair with Mr. C and vowing she'd get nothing in a divorce. He then went to the bedroom and fell asleep. His words drove Corey to a breaking point, leading to her subsequent crime. A year after Sambashi Yuzuker's murder, the case went to trial at the Tokyo District Court. Corey faced charges of murder, disposal of a body, and related crimes. At trial, she admitted her guilt. Her defense argued she had endured domestic abuse, suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, experienced hallucinations, and lacked criminal responsibility at the time of the crime. The prosecution sought a 20-year prison sentence. Yucker's father testified, demanding a life sentence for Corey. The trial spanned 14 hearings over 5 months, concluding with a verdict. Corey was guilty of murder. The defense disagreed and appealed. In June 2010, the Tokyo High Court upheld the original sentence. Story 3. In the early 21st century, as China surged through rapid urbanization, a horrifying case exposed the darkest corners of human nature. A crime so barbaric it defied imagination. The serial murders committed by brothers Xin Chongping and Xin Kongyan from 2003 to 2004 stand as one of the bleakest chapters in modern Chinese criminal history. The shock wasn't just the body count. At least 11 women brutally slain. The case stunned with its savagery, dismemberment, torture, and even whispers of cannibalism. The perpetrators didn't just kill with chilling precision. They displayed an icy indifference to human life. The Cannibal Killer Brothers case didn't just shake China. It raised a haunting question. Are some born monsters? Or does society nurture such darkness? By mid-2003, whispers spread among neighborhood leaders, landlords, and workers in northern lands. Women were vanishing without a trace. Most were sex workers living transient lives with no close kin, so their absence barely raised eyebrows at first. But familiar faces stopped showing up. No returns to their rentals, no luggage taken, phones ringing unanswered. A creeping unease spread like smoke seeping through the shadows. The investigation spark came in early autumn 2003 with a ghastly find. A sanitation worker collecting trash at a night market noticed an unusually heavy plastic bag leaking dark red fluid with a foul stench. Curiosity turned to horror as he opened it, dropping the bag. Inside, a human arm severed at the elbow, nails still painted red. Police sealed the scene. Over the next weeks, more body parts surfaced afoot in a sewer. A disfigured head in a roadside sack of pelvis dragged out by stray dog. All belonged to women, but identifying them was nearly impossible. Most lacked IDs or missing person reports. Yet the precise cuts, the positioning of remains and signs of surgical dismemberment pointed to a calculated killer, likely the same one. A shadow emerged, silent, ruthless, terrifying. Land show gripped with fear. Women living on the margins dared not walk alone. For the police, it was clear this was the start of one of China's most horrific serial murder cases. Then a breakthrough pierced the dark veil. On a gloomy afternoon in late July 2004, a young woman staggered into a small suburban police station. Her state-harrowing clothes torn, a face, pale eyes, vacant body trembling as if fleeing a nightmare. Collapsing at the entrance, she whispered 2 words, "Save me." Once calmed, she recounted a chilling tale that left investigators breathless. She was a rare survivor, kidnapped, held, and tortured in a dim rental room for weeks. She witnessed at least 3 women murdered, forced to watch, and even coerced into helping dispose of bodies. In her panic, she described how victims were beaten, killed, then hacked apart with a sharp knife, bagged in layers of plastic, and dumped in water tanks or sewers. She vividly recalled the 2 culprits, one tall and lean with a long scar down his left cheek, cold-eyed, always in command. She called him Big Brother, the other shorter, quiet, trembling, obeyed the first without question. They called each other Shin and seemed to move rentals frequently. Her shocking testimony cracked the case open. The suspects, 2 men named Shun, one tall with a scarred face, the other timid, calling the first Big Brother, were broadcast to police across northern China. But their constant movement, use of fake IDs and renting under aliases made tracking them a grueling challenge. As the investigation teetered on chaos, a second breakthrough struck, validating the survivor's chilling testimony. In August 2004, maintenance workers at Kaong Apartments in Sichuan, where the Shun brothers once rented, noticed severe drainage clogs despite repeated fixes. Suspecting something sinister, they pried open the main sewer cap to inspect the lower pipes. What they found froze them: a mass of pulpy flesh, swollen, mixed with human hair and fat, rotting in the drain. The stench was so vile, one worker vomited on the spot. They snapped photos, collected samples, and reported the grisly discovery to building management. While reviewing water usage records, a glaring anomaly emerged: the meter for apartment 503, rented by the Shin brothers, spiked wildly, far exceeding normal household consumption. These clues were quietly compiled with photos and a detailed report sent to local police. Within 24 hours, a special task force was formed, sealing off the building and testing sewer samples. DNA analysis confirmed the worst: the flesh was human, matching a recently missing victim. With undeniable evidence, police planned a raid on the brothers' apartment. Shin Kongyan and Shin Chongping, prime suspects in the interstate murders of sex workers. A manhunt was launched. On the evening of August 31, 2004, after meticulous planning, police stormed the hideout. A female officer disguised as a building manager knocked, citing plumbing checks. A perfect ruse given the sewer issues. The door cracked open and the task force surged in like a whirlwind. Shin Chongping, the tall, scarred Big Brother, bolted, barricading himself in the bathroom. Shin Kongam panicked, lunged for the bedroom, aiming to climb out the window, but every exit was sealed. Within minutes, both were subdued, ending over a year of lurking in the shadows and terrorizing communities. The apartment search revealed a horrifying scene. A woman's freshly dismembered body parts, loosely wrapped in plastic bags, lay in the bathroom. Nearby, 2 cans of concentrated acid sat unused, poised to dissolve remains. The small room was a secret slaughterhouse where terror and cruelty played out like a sick ritual. With this raid, the nightmare spanning 2003 came to a close. The cannibal killer brothers were caught, but the investigation's next revelations would shake China to its core. Transition. Music. After their arrest, the Shun brothers initially clammed up, refusing to cooperate. But faced with undeniable evidence, a fresh corpse DNA matching a missing victim, abnormal water usage, and the survivor's testimony, they caved. Their confessions chilled even seasoned investigators. The brothers' crimes weren't random. They operated with cold, precision urban predators, hunting with meticulous plans. They targeted vulnerable women, young fresh from rural areas, scraping by at train stations, bus depots, labor markets, or internet cafes. These victims, often without family or fixed homes, were perfect prey. Shin Chongping played the charmer. Dressed neatly, posing as a connected figure in hospitality or seeking housekeepers. With a warm tone, he'd offer meals or free lodging to settle them in. Shin Chongyin, the quieter shadow, trailed as the meek brother. Bolstering trust. Once lured to their Chaoyang apartment or other rented hideouts, the trap snapped shut. After drinks or small talk, victims were knocked out or bound with rope, then caged in a locked room. There, the brothers unleashed physical and psychological torment, beatings, rape, starvation, forced kneeling or lashings. When victims weakened or resisted, the brothers killed, strangling, bludgeoning, or stabbing with surgical precision. Then in the bathroom, they dismembered. Shin Chongping kept a notebook logging times victims' reactions, even sensations. After tasting organs, details so grotesque, investigators paused their notes. Bodies were chopped, bagged in plastic, and dumped in sewers, trash bins, or foam coolers, tossed in wastelands or rivers. To mask odors, they used chemicals or acid. Police estimated the brothers relocated at least 5 times over a year, staying 1 to 2 months per spot, long enough to snare 1 or 2 victims. Their frequent moves, calm demeanor, and unremarkable appearance kept neighbors oblivious. The case's horror laid not just in its brutality, but its duration. Over a year undetected. Over 10 women vanished, yet no local police connected the dots. Most victims were transient workers without urban residency or close kin, so disappearances went unreported. Some families assumed their daughters were still settling in or hesitated to report due to stigma. Scattered missing person reports across provinces coupled with fragmented data systems in the early 2000s stalled progress. The brothers exploited this, renting cheap rooms with cash, fake IDs, or proxies. In revolving tenements, no one noticed late-night comingings or goings or faint sewer stenches. This silence cloaked their reign of terror. During questioning, the Shuns initially denied everything, but the evidence, DNA, survivor testimony, bloody scene, and matching tools forced their admission of serial murders. Shockingly, they showed no remorse, even smirking at times. Shin Chongping, the mastermind, harbored warped control fantasies and psychopathic traits. He puppeteered his brother, turning Shen Shangyin into a tool for killing and cleanup. Most chilling, they admitted sampling body parts curious about human taste. Their detailed, gruesome confessions exposed Not just their savagery, but hints of their motives and psyche. To understand the roots of these monsters and the societal factors that may have fueled their cruelty, we must delve into China's early 2000s landscape and the Shun brothers' past. In the early 2000s, China roared through economic growth and rapid urbanization. Waves of rural youth flooded cities like Lanzhou, Gansu, Baotou, Inner Mongolia, Taiwan, Shaanxi, Haif, Anhui, and Shiji's Wangabi. Later, the Shan brothers' killing grounds, chasing dreams of a better life. Amid this, a shadow economy thrived. Karaoke bars, nightclubs, massage parlors, steam baths, and covered hair salons masked illicit services. Women in these worlds, often sex workers, lived unregistered, far from family, and barely protected by law. A barmaid or nightclub hostess vanishing for days, rarely triggered alarms. This invisibility was a predator's perfect cover. Targeting society's fringe women meant disappearances when unnoticed. Serial killers were a foreign concept to most Chinese then. Murders were typically isolated. The idea of a relentless slaughterer lurking in plain sight was unthinkable. Though the early 2000s saw shocking cases like Hong Yang's 2003 arrest for killing 17 youths in Hunan, the Shun brothers' crime stunned uniquely. Their acts of murder and organ consumption evoked horrors of a bygone, chaotic era, clashing with modern China's progress. In a Confucian culture, valuing family and karma, the notion of brothers conspiring in such monstrous crimes left the public reeling. Xin Chongping and Xin Kongin grew up in a poor rural family in Hab where harsh conditions and limited opportunities defined life. Their childhood was marked by material and emotional deprivation. Constant parental conflict spread a tense, violent home, shaping their unstable, volatile psyches. Xin Chongping, the elder, early on showed a reclusive, controlling nature. He dropped out of school, took odd jobs and cities, and slid into the underworld's web. A long scar across his left cheek from a past brawl mirrored his hardened yet wounded core. Xin Kongin, the younger, was quieter, molded by his brother's dominance. Rarely defiant, he became a submissive shadow, fearful yet loyal. The brothers had no close friends, their social world sealed tight, relying solely on each other. Raised in poverty without proper guidance and scarred by family and societal strife, their psychological disorders took root. From buried resentments, they morphed into merciless predators, feeding a relentless savage instinct. The bond between Shen Chongping and Shen Kongin wasn't just fraternal. It was a tangled web of dependency and psychological strain. Chongping, domineering and manipulative, wasn't just the elder, but the mastermind orchestrating every crime. Kongin, submissive and cowed, became his tool, both terrified and obedient. This dynamic left Chong powerless to resist or break free. Throughout their spree, Chongping called the shots, planning, commanding, deciding, while Chong merely executed, trapped in his brother's dark orbit. After the arrests, investigators traced the brothers' bloody trail, piecing together confessions, DNA missing person reports, and old crime scenes to identify victims. The first confirmed was Chen Xiaomi, a 19-year-old from Hunan, freshly arrived in Sichuan seeking work. Records showed Qin called home, saying a man offered her a restaurant job and temporary lodging. That was her last contact. 3 months later, her family reported her missing, but with no specific address. The case stalled. In the Shan's apartment, police found a bracelet engraved with Xiaomi and blood matching her mother's DNA. Shan was the first victim, marking the start of a year-long spree of savagery. Li Chozing, 18, from Shangxi, a high school graduate dreaming of learning tailoring to support her parents. Gentle and diligent, she fell into the brothers' deadly trap. Wang Shirmei, 22, from Hubei, a single mother working in the city to feed her child raised by grandparents. She spoke of sending her only to lose her life before settling. Zhang Ling, 17, from Guangdong, the youngest victim, just out of high school, chasing odd jobs. Lured by promises of easy work, she met a brutal end. Others, nameless faces, their stories less known, vanished in silent agony. Their families miles away endured unrelenting grief, yearning for justice to ease their loss. As the victims' tragic stories unfolded, public outrage swelled, demanding a fair trial. The Shen brothers' case wasn't just about justice. It was a testament to the law's resolve to protect and a stark warning against such barbarity. In late 2004, the trial of Shan Chongping and Shen Kongyan unfolded at Lanshouse Intermediate People's Court under tight security. Hundreds of reporters and citizens gathered early, eager to see justice served for the duo that haunted society for over a year. This wasn't just a trial. It was historic, drawing unprecedented attention from media, the public, and criminologists. Some attendees fled the courtroom, unable to stomach the ghastly details: tortured, dismemberment, cannibalism, and forcing innocents to aid their crimes. Evidence piled high: DNA traces, apartment findings, the survivor's testimony, and the brothers' own chilling confessions laid bare before the public. Descriptions of captivity, murder, dismemberment, and disposal plunged the courtroom into a heavy, furious silence. Victims' families wept as details emerged. Lured, tortured, killed, discarded like trash. The defendant stood cold, barely remorseful, even as a 200-page indictment detailed 11 brutal murders. Shin Chongping, the mastermind, stared blankly at the judges, his gaze hollow. Shan Kongyan, the accomplice, initially trembled, but soon mirrored his brother's apathy. The defense had little ground, weakly, arguing Kongyan was manipulated by his brothers' psychological control. The court rejected this ruling, both fully aware and capable. Charged with organized murder, multiple homicides endangering society, and crimes like illegal detention, coercion, and corpse desecration, their guilt was undeniable. After hours of deliberation, the court delivered the ultimate penalty: death. Executed weeks later, the swift sentence aimed to quell public fury and deter future horrors. Yet for victims, families, and society, no punishment could erase the scars left by these human monsters. The case file landed in the hands of Chinese criminology institutes, spotlighting Shen Kongyan as a chilling archetype, a serial killer with psychopathic detachment, incapable of empathy or guilt. Experts dubbed him a black hole in the human psyche, of being blind to the line between person and flesh. For over a year, the brothers slaughtered at least 11 young women, mostly rural migrants seeking work isolated from family. They lured victims to their rented rooms with promises of lodging, jobs or aid. Once trapped, the women endured captivity, torture, and rape before being killed, dismembered and disposed of, flushed down sewers, tossed in trash, or dissolved in acid. The Shin brothers case didn't just end with death sentences. It unleashed a tidal wave of outrage and psychological shock across China. Never before had a case so starkly exposed society's underbelly: the isolation of migrants, the dangers of cheap rentals, and the glaring gaps in protecting young women in cities. When details broke, Chinese social media and press erupted. Thousands of posts, comments, and fiery debates flooded platforms. Public fury targeted the brothers' brutality while raising searing questions about societal oversight, neighborhood security, and the vulnerability of young female workers, many stigmatized as sex workers. The case sparked academic debates on criminal psychology, personality disorders, and extreme violence. Experts called for better local mental health and social systems to catch deviant behavior early. Media seized the story. CCTV aired a special case files episode, dissecting the crimes and investigation. Platforms like Billy, and Youku saw independent investigators and crime channels rack up millions of views with detailed videos. Beyond shock, the case carved a deep scar in early 2000s China. It forced a reckoning even in modern safe cities. Dark corners festered, breeding grounds for evil if ignored. Though closed, the case's echoes linger, haunting millions. The Cannibal Brothers' tale isn't just chilling. It's a warning of society's failures, the plight of the marginalized, gaps in urban oversight, and the urgent need to protect young migrant women. Story 4. Now we dive into a case that sent shockwaves across the globe 16 years ago, implicating 4 nations: China, the United States, New Zealand, and Australia. This case stands out not only for the chilling brutality of the killer, but also for the extraordinary identity of the perpetrator, a self-proclaimed grandmaster of Tai Chi. In the world of Jiniang's Wuo novels, he'd be akin to a successor of Jin Sanfeng, a figure revered by martial arts sects, admired and sought after for alliances. Yet, in a cruel twist of fate, this so-called Tai Chi king, celebrated for his unparalleled martial prowess, turned his skills into a weapon against his innocent wife before fleeing abroad. He even earned the dubious distinction of being the first person of Chinese descent featured on America's infamous Most Wanted list, America's Most Wanted. On the morning of September 15, 2007, at the escalator entrance of Southern Cross Railway Station in Melbourne, Australia, a startling discovery was made. A girl barely 2 or 3 years old, dressed in a red jacket, her hair cropped to her ears. No adults were in sight, no luggage nearby. Amid the bustling crowds, the little girl stood alone, sobbing for her mother, her cries piercing the air and drawing pitying glances from passers-by. An elderly couple witnessing the heart-wrenching scene alerted station staff. The staff quickly realized the child spoke no English, not even enough to share her name. She carried no identification, only the red jacket with a distinctive brand. With no other clues, the station workers dubbed her Pumpkin Girl. An urgent announcement echoed through the station's loudspeakers, pleading for her family to come forward. Meanwhile, security scoured CCTV footage and spotted a man in black pulling a suitcase, leading the girl by the hand to the escalator. He leaned down, whispered a few words, then walked away, leaving her to weep alone. The clear signs of child abandonment prompted the station to alert Melbourne police, but the authorities faced immediate hurdles. The girl's identity was unknown, and communication was impossible. In a desperate bid for answers, they turned to a set of simple picture cards. Slowly, the girl pointed to images of father, mother, car and airplane, but these fragments offered no real leads. That afternoon, the police released the girl's photo to the media, hoping the public could provide vital clues. Within hours, a breakthrough, the owner of a local guest house contacted authorities. A man in black, the same man had checked in with the girl the previous night. He claimed to be her father, said they were in Melbourne for a trip, but the next morning he checked out abruptly, his behavior raising red flags. Another lead came from a travel agency employee. The day before, this man had brought the girl to their office, inquiring about one-way flights to South Africa. When told the next flight was 3 days away, he seemed frustrated. He then asked about Canada, the UK, and other visa-free destinations for New Zealand passport holders. After some hesitation, he bought a single ticket to Los Angeles for the following noon for himself alone. This bizarre behavior stuck with the employee, who recalled his name. Shane, 59, a New Zealand citizen. Melbourne police confirmed she had indeed flown to Los Angeles shortly after abandoning the girl. Through this, they identified the child as Viking Shanun. Initially, the police suspected a failed cross-border kidnapping, possibly tied to a custody dispute, perhaps at the last moment, lacking documents or funds. Shane abandoned his daughter and fled. Australian authorities quickly contacted New Zealand police requesting the girl's mother, Luanan, to come to Melbourne and claim her daughter. But then, a shocking twist. Luanan was missing. Had both parents abandoned their helpless little girl? This theory crumbled fast. Neighbors in New Zealand vouched for Luanan, describing her as a devoted mother who'd never neglect her child. The last they saw her was the afternoon of September 12. She'd mentioned taking Shashan to Wellington to visit friends, so they assumed she'd left. 2 days later, New Zealand police searched Shannon and Luanan's home. No signs of a struggle. Outside, the media swarmed, forcing police to set up barriers to maintain order. Then, a chilling discovery. The couple's car, parked nearby, emitted a foul odor. When police popped the trunk, a putrid stench of decay hit them. Inside lay a decomposing body. It was Luanan. Forensic results came swiftly. Cause of death, asphyxiation. A yellow tie was still tightly knotted around the victim's neck. Experts estimated she'd been dead at least a week before discovery. In the trunk, police found another clue, a pair of women's underwear. Shockingly, forensic analysis revealed DNA traces from 3 different men on the garment alongside Luanan's hair and DNA. Even more damning, one of those DNA samples found on both the underwear and the yellow tie that ended her life matched Shannon. Who did the other 2 DNA traces belong to? And who was Shannon? A man who drew such intense international media attention? By his own account, Shane began studying Shaolin Kung Fu at age 8. At 18, he claimed to have met a mysterious master, Taoist Xian, who taught him a secret technique called primordial Tai Chi. By 38, She proclaimed himself the sixth-generation heir of the prestigious Wu-style Taiki at the peak of his martial arts fame at 41. He moved to New Zealand as a martial arts instructor, swiftly rising to prominence in the local scene. Some records even claim he traveled the world, elected as chairman of the International Wheelie Taiki Alliance. But when journalists traced his roots to Fujian City, Liaoning Province, China, to verify his glittering biography, they uncovered a starkly different story. Shinin came from an ordinary family. His parents were factory workers, struggling to make ends meet. They had little time to raise him properly. From a young age, Shu was notorious as a defiant, word child. He bullied peers, even extorting younger kids in the neighborhood for protection money. Bluntly put, Yang Shu was a pint-sized thug, reckless and unmanageable. His life took a turn in the 1980s when the film Shaolin Temple swept China, igniting a martial arts frenzy. Like millions of kids his age, she was obsessed, begging his parents to let him train at the Shaolin Temple. But the idea of their only son becoming a monk was unthinkable. After much deliberation, they enrolled him in a local sports school, hoping he'd find discipline and a stable future. Instead, she learned little at the sports school. Worse, he picked up vices: smoking, drinking, gambling. His true talent: lying so convincingly that everyone believed him. After graduating, he drifted through job security guard, cement hauler. But his laziness and aversion to hardship meant nothing stuck. In the 1980s, China was gripped by a Kian craze. Self-proclaimed masters popped up everywhere, boasting miraculous powers from healing diseases to summoning rain. Traditional martial arts rode this wave with titles like Grandmaster, True Air, and Lost Secret. Techniques sprouting like weeds, creating a chaotic Wu-like world straight out of Jin Yang's novels. Shane, with his smattering of sports school training, seized the moment. He invented his own Tai Chi style. At first, he called it Shues-style Tai Chi, but it lacked flair. So, he rebranded it Wu-style Tai Chi, marketing it as a combat-focused art for real fights. Despite claiming to be a rare martial arts prodigy, Xuan never fought in a single match in over 20 years. His true skill was his silver tongue. When challengers arrived at his dojo, he dodged every duel with excuses. To shield himself, he hired ex-soldiers and kickboxers as disciples, essentially bodyguards. Whenever a challenger appeared, he'd stand behind them, barking, "Want to fight me? Fine, beat my students first." Then he'd watch from the sidelines, never stepping into the ring. For over 2 decades, this Tai Chi king never fought. As the saying goes, "If I don't step into the ring, no one can defeat me." But while he played coward in public at home, he was brutally bold. Shui regularly beat his wife, leaving her battered and bedridden. Unable to endure the relentless abuse, his first wife seized her chance when Shui was away performing martial arts. She fled and filed for divorce. When Xuan learned his wife wanted a divorce, he flew into an uncontrollable rage. At the divorce mediation, he lunged at her in front of everyone. But this time, luck wasn't on his side. A group of older women from the Women's Association and Neighborhood Committee pounced, scratching and clawing until he was battered and bruised. The absurd spectacle, a martial arts master pummeled by neighborhood aunties, spread like wildfire, becoming a local laughingstock. Humiliated, his students abandoned him one by one. His wife finalized the divorce. After days of disgrace, Xuan resolved to flee China, seeking a fresh start to continue his deceptions. He chose New Zealand. Court records later revealed he entered on a tourist visa, then fabricated a story of religious persecution to claim asylum. With his knack for deceit, he swiftly opened a dojo, attracting foreign students. He even launched his own newspaper, acting as its editor-in-chief. His ventures flourished, raking in millions annually, upgrading him from a cramped rental to a lavish villa. But by 2003, Shui Empire crumbled. His Chinese language newspaper, Tangren Street, tanked. Its shallow, worthless content drove readers away, and ad revenue plummeted. Businesses refused to partner, rendering the paper useless. Some sneered it wasn't even fit for toilet paper. After staggering losses exceeding $800,000 USD, Shui shuttered the paper. At his lowest, another scandal erupted. He was accused of physically harassing a female student. Though he settled the matter with a hefty payout, his reputation was in tatters. His dojo lost credibility. New students dwindled, and his primary income dried up. Desperate, Shui watched his once lucrative gold mine collapse. With no other options, he carved his opulent villa into small rental units, scraping by on meager rent to survive his mounting hardships. Among his tenants was a young international student from Changsha, Hunan Province, China, Luin. Strikingly beautiful with fair skin, she came from humble roots. Her academic record was average and she planned to study English in New Zealand, hoping to pass the IELTS exam and enroll in university. But a scam study abroad agency derailed her dreams. Failing IELTS and unable to afford university, Luanan hit rock bottom. Then she stumbled upon Shui's rental ad. Fate, it seemed, had quietly woven their paths together. How they met, fell in love, and married remains a mystery. But picture this. A lonely young woman, adrift in a foreign land, lacking money and security, meets a seasoned middle-aged man with a house, a car, New Zealand citizenship, and a silver tongue. Was SCHW manipulating her emotions, or was Luanan seeking financial stability? Either way, it made sense. They married in 2004. Just 6 months later, Luanan gave birth to a beautiful, adorable daughter. She named her Xuan. The poetic name evokes a dreamy, romantic soul. Luan yearning for love and a bright future. Such a woman could hardly find common ground with a crude, unrefined, and violently abusive man like Xuanan. Their marriage, rushed and reckless, was doomed to clash from the start. As the internet gained attraction, Luanan dove into the virtual world, emerging as an early blogger under the evocative pseudonym Highflower. She posted moody reflections with romantic titles and dazzling selfies, crafting a distinct persona. Notably, her blog never featured her husband. Perhaps Lu found Xuanan's crude, unappealing appearance unfit to share her spotlight. Instead, every photo showcased just her and her daughter. This subtle rejection fueled deep-seated jealousy and insecurity. Worse, he harbored baseless suspicions that Shang Xuan wasn't his simply because she was too beautiful, bearing no resemblance to him. Ironically, despite his doubts, he adamantly refused a DNA test. Instead, he picked fights, using any excuse to brutally torment his wife. After each savage beating, he'd fall to his knees, sobbing, begging for forgiveness, pleading with her to bear him a son to inherit his vaunted martial arts legacy. Absurd demand was unthinkable for Luanan, she wrote on her blog. Her words heavy with despair. One mistake shouldn't be buried with another. Piling wrong upon wrong only traps you deeper in a dead-end life. To protect herself, Lu secretly took emergency contraceptives to avoid pregnancy with her abusive husband. But tragedy struck when Shui found the pill packaging in the trash. Enraged, he beat her so viciously he broke one of her ribs. This time, doctors alerted the police. At her hospital bed, Shui was arrested and sentenced to 1 year in prison for intentional assault. That year in jail was a rare reprieve for Luanan and little Chen Sunuan. They moved to Wellington, 500 kilometers from Auckland, to start anew, but their fleeting peace shattered. No one foresaw the tragedy looming. Shui reappeared, wielding his old tricks, crocodile tears, and promises of change, begging Lu to return for their daughter's sake. With a soft heart, she relented, moving back to Auckland. Little did she know this choice would set the stage for her life's darkest chapter. Friends later revealed that though back with Shu, Luan secretly maintained relationships with a lover and an artist, quietly saving money to escape her hellish marriage with Jian's. But Shu uncovered her plan. Driven to madness, he committed the unthinkable. He murdered the wife who once shared his bed. The killing ended Luanan's pain-filled life when New Zealand police confirmed Xuanyan had fled to the US. They contacted the FBI for assistance in the manhunt. They also reached out to America's Most Wanted, hoping the show's massive reach would help capture the fugitive killer. The program sprang into action, producing a 6-minute episode reconstructing the case and profiling the suspect. They announced a $50,000 US reward for information leading to Shui's arrest. Beyond that, the show published Shui's photo and a wanted notice in Chinese and major Chinese language newspapers targeting the Chinese diaspora. Knowing the suspect was a martial arts master, US media from print to TV warned of his extreme danger, urging the public not to confront him, but to alert police immediately if spotted. Days later, an astonishing twist unfolded. In Atlanta, over 3,000 kilometers from Los Angeles, 6 Chinese immigrants working at a Chinatown restaurant gathered for a weekend meal. Ordinary laborers, cooks, and delivery workers. They could never have imagined their casual gathering would make them key players in the hunt for a ruthless international criminal. After a few beers, one of the group glanced at the Chinese newspaper lining the table. The face on the front page wanted posters stopped him cold. He snatched it up, stared hard, then gasped, "Wait. This is the old man Tang renting the place above mine." The others crowded around, scrutinizing the image. The more they looked, the more certain they were the man who'd moved from the West Coast a month ago, claiming to be a masser, planning a local business, and boasting some martial arts skills was none other than Xuanan. And the fugitive police were hunting. To be sure, the man who spotted him pulled out his phone, scrolling to a photo taken days earlier. With Old Man Tang. The group agreed it was SCHW. After heated discussion, the 6 friends grabbed the newspaper and raced to the nearest police station. But reporting a crime in America wasn't easy. As Chinatown laborers with little to no English, their frantic words and gestures baffled the duty officer. Desperate one pointed at Shui's photo and shouted in Chinese, "He's a murderer." The outburst meant nothing to the American officers who didn't speak Chinese. The duty officer suggested calling the 911 emergency line for a Chinese interpreter. Wu, the group's best English speaker, stammered a clumsy sentence over the phone. After an agonizing wait, an interpreter finally joined the call, promising to relay their story to the female officer on duty. But the group refused to give up. With the interpreter line still open, they outlined a bold plan. And the next morning, they'd lure the suspect to a nearby gas station. If police set up an ambush, they could nab him. Yet, despite their urgent pleas, the officer calmly sat at her computer, searching the wanted database. Bizarrely, she found no record of Shui poster, only images of Lu Yunan and Chin Sunuan. Then the end of shift bell rang. She packed up, shut down her computer, and strolled out. Tossing back a curd. Very good. The group seated, choked by helplessness. Their efforts had been futile. With no faith in local police, they resolved to take matters into their own hands. The next morning, under the pretense of meeting a fellow masser to discuss business, they lured Shui out. Knowing he was a global fugitive, Shui was cautious, changing the meeting spot multiple times before agreeing to visit Kayan Ba's home, one of the group. The moment Shui and saw the crowd waiting, he knew he'd been trapped. He spun to flee, but the door was blocked. They swarmed him. Some pinned his arms, others his legs, wrestling him to the floor. To prevent escape, they stripped off his clothes and shoes, using his belt and laces to bind him tightly before calling the police. Nearly half an hour later, police arrived. After confirming the suspect was Xuan Yen, America's Most Wanted, honored its $50,000 reward to the 6 courageous Chinese immigrants. New Zealand police added $10,000 to commend their role in capturing the dangerous criminal. In the struggle, the group accidentally scratched the walls of the rented apartment. Upon receiving the reward, they promptly paid $2,000 to the landlord for repairs. More remarkably, they donated half the remaining reward to a charity fund named Pumpkin Girl Fund to support Xuan, the innocent child heartlessly abandoned by her father at the train station. But sometimes good deeds come at a cost. Several group members faced trouble afterward. As undocumented workers, they lacked legal residency. When news of Shui capture aired widely, U.S. immigration authorities tracked them down, delivering a cold verdict. What you did was great, but illegal immigration is still illegal. You must be deported. Still none regretted their actions. One spoke bluntly. To live as a human, you must follow your conscience. We did this for justice, for society, and for that poor girl. In September 2009, the trial for Xuan's murder of his wife opened at Auckland's High Court. A striking detail, all 12 jurors were women. Facing the court, Shui vehemently denied the charges. His defense lawyer launched a vicious tactic attacking the victim's character, painting Luinen as an unfaithful woman who slept around. He highlighted the DNA of 3 men on her underwear and, crucially, another man's DNA besides Shui's on the yellow tie used to kill her, suggesting someone else could be the true culprit. But the prosecution's forensic experts swiftly dismantled this claim. They explained that the other men's DNA traces were minimal, likely from casual contact or laundry contamination. In contrast, Shui's DNA was prominent on both ends of the tie, exactly where he gripped it to strangle his victim. Seeing this defense falter, the lawyer pivoted to a bizarre theory. Luinen's death was an accident from autoerotic asphyxiation. He claimed she used her husband's tie to heighten arousal, accidentally tightening it too much, leading to her unintended death. The prosecution tore this apart. Forget whether a young, ordinary woman like Luinen would engage in such a bizarre, dangerous act, they argued. How could she naked climb into a car trunk and lock it from the outside? It's absurdly laughable. In less than half a day, the all-female jury unanimously convicted Shui Nanan of murder, sentencing him to life imprisonment with no parole for 12 years. As the verdict rang out, Shui exploded, screaming in the courtroom, decrying the ruling as prejudice and injustice. He later appealed, but the court upheld the original sentence. If the trial was a martial arts duel, this was the first and only time the self-proclaimed Tai Chi King stepped into the ring. In this life-or-death legal battle, he lost utterly and humiliatingly. Over the 2 years from Luinen's murder to the trial's end, little Xuan became a focal point of compassion across Australia, New Zealand, the US, and China. Countless donors sent money and essentials, hoping to ease the pain of her harsh fate and give her a peaceful, happy childhood like any other child. The reward money donated by the brave Chinese immigrants went into the Pumpkin Girl Fund to support Chang Xuan's future and education. Even Shui's eldest daughter, Shui Xiao, who had never met her half-sister, stepped forward to take responsibility. No matter how awful our father is, the child is innocent, she said. But the court ultimately granted custody to Chang Xian's maternal grandmother. Soon after Shui's imprisonment, the grandmother took Chang Xian back to China. Online debates flared. Some argued Chang Xuan should stay in Auckland for better education. Others questioned the grandmother's ability to raise her, pointing to her perceived failure with Luinen. In 2019, an article titled "Finding Pumpkin Girl" revived the story. Now 18, Chan Gin was set to receive $40,000 from the Pumpkin Girl Fund. But a family friend told Chinese media that Chang Xuan had taken a new name and lived a stable, happy life. Her grandmother, now a senior executive at a major Changsha corporation, was financially secure. The family chose to donate the entire fund to a children's hospital to help other disadvantaged kids. Story 5. A quiet morning at a prestigious hospital. A young intern doctor, lifeless, found sprawled at the base of a dormitory building. Shattered glasses, a final text sent at dawn, and bizarrely, an emergency call made from his phone after he was already motionless. What seemed like a tragic suicide quickly spiraled when the family revealed 16 pounds of damning documents left by the victim. Allegations of exploitation, abuse of power, and the dark underbelly of the medical world began to surface. Was this a desperate act or a staged end to conceal a horrific truth? March 26, 2019. Shanghai barely awake after a cold. Drizzly night, frozen shock at Fudan University's #1 hospital. One of China's top medical institutions. At 6:15 a.m., a night shift security guard patrolling the intern dorm stumbled upon a body sprawled on the concrete. The man wore a thin dark jacket, his canvas shoes intact, but his black-rimmed glasses lay shattered. Beside his head, blood pooling from the back of his skull. His face was cold, pulseless. When the first investigator arrived, the scene halted him in his tracks. The male body lay nearly 7 meters from the building's base. An unusually far distance, defying the physics of a free fall from the rooftop. Blood smeared the icy cement and chillingly brain tissue splattered nearby, signaling a catastrophic head injury on impact. Looking up, the investigators spotted a rectangular vent on the roof, likely the point of descent. Its ledge coated in thick black dust bore a faint scratch mark stretching along the edge. The body was buried beneath a brick as if someone had climbed over, leaving traces of friction. No one witnessed the moment he fell. The staff dorm was quiet in the early hours. Yet, a security camera from a nearby building captured a figure plummeting at 8:07 a.m. on May 8, 2024, the estimated time of death. Approaching the body, investigators searched his belongings. What stunned them? A bundle of cash, 24,540 Chinese yuan, roughly $3,435, neatly folded, rubber banded, and tucked in a paper envelope. A fortune for an intern had raised questions. Why carry so much cash? For what purpose? The area was sealed off. Forensic teams swept for clues, blood stains, shoe prints, wall scratches, phone data, and nearby camera footage. The victim was identified as Lu Shuiyu, 25, a final-year intern known for his skill and diligence with no history of mental instability. He just finished a grueling 24-hour shift. No witnesses, no suicide note, but the phone in his jacket pocket revealed something eerie. When medics and security checked it, they found an emergency call made at 4:17 a.m. from Lu's phone after his estimated time of death. The call lasted 6 seconds, silent, then disconnected. Stranger still, his last text sent at 3:52 a.m. To a close friend, "Rid, I'm exhausted. If something happens to me," the scene shifted from a tragedy to a hospital scandal. The hospital and university quickly claimed Lu took his own life due to intense academic and work pressure. The case was hushed. No press conference, no detailed autopsy, and the body was sent to the morgue. The victim was identified as Lu, 25, a final year intern known for his skill and diligence with no history of mental instability. He just finished a grueling 24-hour shift. No witnesses, no suicide note, but the phone in his jacket pocket revealed something eerie. When medics and security checked it, they found an emergency call made at 4:17 a.m. from Lu's phone after his estimated time of death. The call lasted 6 seconds, silent, then disconnected. Stranger still, his last text sent at 3:52 a.m. To a close friend. "Read, I'm exhausted. If something happens to me, don't let it be buried." Lu's texts and chats with friends before his death revealed troubling patterns. He described being berated and humiliated by senior doctors, forced to work 24 to 36-hour shifts without rest or pay, sometimes barred from leaving the duty room to eat or use the bathroom. The hospital's swift, cold dismissal didn't sit right. Lu's family demanded a full reinvestigation, refusing to sign documents, labeling it a suicide. The case seemed destined for silence until they uncovered something in Luo's old dorm room. A suitcase nearly 16 kilograms stuffed with documents, diaries, complaints, and internal records. Luo called it the White Hell. These weren't just the ramblings of a despairing young doctor. They were a searing indictment of a brutal, dehumanizing medical training system. The discovery rocked public opinion, forcing authorities to reopen the case from scratch. Who is Lu? Why would a brilliant young doctor with a bright future fall into such despair? If that's even what happened. To unravel this tragedy, we must explore the cutthroat medical world he navigated and the man behind the name that shook China's healthcare system. Lu Shuai, born in 1996, grew up in Luo Family Village, Sangkai Town, Nizjiang City, Sichuan Province. The only child of poor farmers, Lu knew education was his only escape from hardship. His parents, both over 50, toiled in the fields, pouring their meager earnings into his studies. From primary school, Lu shone academically. In high school, he ranked among the county's top students. Friends and teachers described him as gentle, polite, and selfless, deeply devoted to his parents. Beyond academics, Lu was fascinated by human anatomy and diseases, a passion that drew him to medicine. During his internship 2018 to 2019, China's medical field was a pressure cooker. A massive population, a shortage of doctors, and relentless societal demands crushed young professionals. Peers and professors called Luo reserved, humble, yet fiercely dedicated to patients. His internship records showed he met deadlines, tackled grueling tasks, and covered shifts for others without complaint. In China's residency system, interns like Luo were near invisible. Unpaid, without benefits. They worked like full-time staff, but held no official status. Shifts stretched 24 to 36 hours, no lunch breaks, no annual leave. They were often assigned menial tasks, from scrubbing equipment to mopping operating rooms. To stay on or advance, they competed ruthlessly. One misstep could brand them unfit, shattering their medical dreams. Worse, a toxic internet slave culture festered in top hospitals. Trainees faced public humiliation, harsh punishments, even harassment or threats from senior doctors. Speaking out risked being labeled unprofessional or too weak for the pressure. In 2014, Luo earned a spot at Southwest Medical University, graduating with honors. Unrelenting, he studied further, and in 2021, he secured a master's program in surgery at Central South University in Hunan, a prestigious 985 national institution. Remarkably, he also gained admission to Tsinghua Medical University, one of China's most elite schools. His father, worried about family finances, urged Luo to choose Central South over a costly Beijing. Heeding the advice, Lu moved to Changsha, enrolling at Shanja Hospital. Number 2, a top teaching hospital where he pinned his hopes for a medical career. At Chianja, Luo juggled roles. As a master's student and intern, primarily in kidney transplant surgery while rotating through other surgical units. Despite the pressure, he remained upbeat, volunteering for night shifts and heavy tasks. Colleagues recall a passionate, meticulous young man with a warm smile, never complaining. A patient once shared, "Dr. Luo was so kind. He spoke gently, explaining everything clearly to ease my fears." Earning a mere $280,420. Monthly stipend, $2,000, $3,000, CNY. Luo lived frugally in the hospital dorm, occasionally sending money home. For him, medicine wasn't just a job, it was a calling. In his master's application, he wrote, "I vow to use my skills to protect the dignity of life." A classmate recalled Lu's outrage after witnessing a doctor accept a patient's envelope bribe. He called it a stain on medicine, believing that if young doctors like him stayed silent, the corruption would fester. That unyielding integrity and love for his craft drove Luo to document every injustice, every dark corner of his internship, ultimately leading to his dangerous choice to expose the truth, no matter the cost. In his personal life, Lu was a single man, unmarried, childless. Among close friends, rumors swirled of an unrequited crush on a female colleague. But he never confessed his feelings. Remarkably, his social circle was pristine. No personal conflicts save for minor work disputes with colleagues. The veil of mystery began to lift in September 2021. Upon starting his internship, a massive suspicious stream of money flowed into Luo's account, disguised as fees from the hospital. Over 2 years, it totaled over 400,000 Chinese yuan, roughly 56,000 US, a staggering sum. Shockingly, Lu never flaunted or spent this money. Even his family was unaware. Only after his death did his parents learn of it through police reeling with the question, "Our son lived on pennies. Why would the hospital funnel him nearly $500,000 yuan?" That question sounded an alarm, linking Luo to shadowy suspects. Who is behind these murky transactions? What was their true purpose? These financial clues painted a chilling picture, revealing a fatal connection between victim and perpetrator. Lu worked under Dr. Lu Zhang Fing, later exposed as the mastermind of a massive medical corruption scandal. The mysterious fees paid to Luo aligned suspiciously with Lu's tenure. Some transactions even occurring after Lu's arrest in August 2022. A horrifying theory emerged. Was a dark hospital syndicate using Luo's account as a conduit for money laundering? Or was the cash a bribe to buy his silence? Whatever the motive, one truth crystallized. Lu stood at the deadly intersection of conscience and crime. And that brutal reality may have cost him his life. After Luo's unnatural death, while sorting through his dorm belongings, his family uncovered a suitcase weighing nearly 16 kilograms. Inside, hundreds of meticulously numbered pages, diaries, handwritten letters, complaints, evaluations, shift logs, recorded conversations, and internship-related documents. These weren't just clues. They tore open a long, suppressed, dark corner of China's medical system. Daily, Lu documented his shift hours, tasks, health, and bottled up emotions. He described 24-hour shifts, sometimes stretching to 36, with barely food or rest. The stress was so intense he lost track of day and night. One scrolled entry written in exhaustion. On duty from 6 a.m. yesterday to 11 a.m. today. One BIOS. Half a cup of water collapsed, then called the surgery. The operating lights blinded me. No one asked if I was okay. They just needed me to keep going. Beyond physical depletion, mental strain crushed him daily. He recounted being berated and humiliated by mentors in front of peers for minor errors like a misspelled prescription or an incomplete answer. In red ink, he wrote, "Today they called me stupid, useless." Said, "I shamed the surgical team. I fought back tears." More alarming, Lou was repeatedly forced to perform unauthorized procedures, inserting drainage tubes, suturing in surgeries, administering IVs to newborns without a medical license or proper training. A single mistake could cause severe complications or death. In an unsent, handwritten complaint, he laid bare his fear. "I'm not a licensed doctor. I shouldn't do these procedures. I'm terrified of causing harm. But if I refuse, they threaten to dock my scores, kick me out of residency." Those trembling, raw, desperate words exposed not just one man's pain, but a callous medical training system that treated young doctors as sacrificial pawns for profit and prestige. Among Lou Shui's documents, one discovery sent chills down spines: secret audio recordings captured on his phone, and a small recorder hidden in his drawer. No visuals needed. The voices alone painted a suffocating, violent atmosphere in the world he endured. From his notes and files, Lou meticulously pieced together a grim portrait of the brutal operations at Xia Hospital No. 2 and beyond at China's top medical facilities. Interns and residents were treated as free labor. They toiled endless hours unpaid without clear contracts. Voiceless in the system. They weren't trained. They were thrown into the merciless grind of shift surgeries and emergency care. Those who spoke up or showed exhaustion faced warnings, docked scores, or threats of expulsion. We're not students, not doctors, not even human, Lou wrote in a notebook. We're tools walking, obeying, nodding silent. Ethics took a back seat in training, replaced by a toxic culture break them to build them. Senior doctors, instead of mentoring, wielded power like tyrants, overloading interns, venting frustrations, humiliating them publicly. Even showing signs of prolonged psychological harassment. Lou didn't just write. He collected, cross-referenced, and noted every detail, name, and incident. His evidence transcended personal anguish. It was a cold, hard dossier exposing a warped, exploitative, inhumane training model. He was a doctor, but above all a human. His documents were a final cry in a medical system racing for prestige and profit. Someone fell to prove a simple truth. Humans aren't tools. Reading through the 16 kgs of accusations, Lou's father, Lu Puan, found two distinct sections. The first detailed Dr. Lu Zhang Fing actions, excessive surgeries, patient names, tactics like unnecessary appendectomies, falsified records, and surgical videos. The second covered organ donation and pediatric transplants with specifics on donors, recipients, chats, and recordings hinting at organ trafficking and money laundering. In August 2024, Luo's father filed a formal Complaint with Changsha Police and the Hunan Health Department attaching portions of his son's meticulous records. Exposing misconduct at Shunja Hospital No. 2. He demanded a re-investigation of Luo's mysterious death. Initial responses were sluggish and inconsistent. Police awaited forensic results while the health department claimed the case was handed to law enforcement. Feeling stonewalled, Lu's parents took to Weibo in late 2024. Posting his diaries, letters, recordings, and draft complaints. China's social media erupted. The post went viral, drawing investigative journalists, legal medical experts, and netizens. Hashtags like number 16 pounds of truth, one resident, or slave, and skyrocketed to top searches. Millions of shares, comments, and discussions flooded in within 48 hours. The silence shattered. Thousands of medical students and young doctors from across China shared their own stories. Echoes of Luo's ordeal, unpaid overnight shifts, public humiliation, fear of medical errors from untrained procedures. What was once whispered in hospital corridors became a collective cry for help. Hashtags like number 16 pounds of truth, a resident, or slave. And the Lu case skyrocketed to top searches. Millions of shares, comments, and discussions flooded in within 48 hours. To the public, Lu was more than a victim. He became the whistleblower in the white coat, a symbol of courage unyielding against injustice, even at the cost of his life. On December 24, 2024, Luo personally delivered his son's files and audio recordings to the National Health Commission and Hunan Health Department. 6 days later, Hunan authorities issued a statement acknowledging the complaint, a pivotal first step signaling provincial recognition of the case. In February 2025, Chongqing Evening News published an interview with Luo's family, revealing snippets of his explosive documents. Lu Pachuan described them as exposing palace secrets within Xia Hospital No. 2, implicating not just Dr. Lu Shangfing, but others, too. The family was convinced their son was silenced for knowing too much. By May 2025, a year after Luo's death, his name surged to the top of Weibo and Bulletin searches. The tale of a whistle-blowing intern found dead ignited millions across China. Quell's lawyers and journalists dissected the case. Why did the scene contradict the suicide? Who wiped Luo's computer data? What did the pediatric organ files mean? And where did the 400,000 Chinese yuan 56,000 US come from? Public outrage hit a fever pitch. Tens of thousands of comments flooded official government accounts, demanding an independent investigation. Many believed a local probe would sink the case. Under pressure, on June 12, 2025, Hunan's health department announced it had handed corruption evidence from Xianga Hospital No. 2 to police. A joint task force comprising Hunan Health Central South University and Changsha Police was formed quietly. Established in November 2024, but only publicized now. The task force ordered a forensic re-examination using photos, medical records, and emergency reports. Their conclusion: Luoja died from severe trauma caused by a high fall. No signs of beating, binding, or external force were found. Toxicology tests detected no foreign substances or poisons, ruling out drugging or poisoning. The scene was reconstructed meticulously. Findings showed Luo climbed the rooftop alone, scaled the barrier, and jumped through the vent. No assistance needed. No foreign footprints or fingerprints were found. Only shoe marks matching Lugo's sandals. His room showed no significant disturbance or clear signs of a struggle. His broken glasses, confirmed by a roommate, had loose frames since April 2024. The task force reviewed all dorm and nearby camera footage from May 6 to 8, 2024. Lugo had no contact with strangers. Wasn't followed and no one else appeared in his apartment or the area during the incident. Over 50 people, mentors, classmates, colleagues, security, and neighbors were questioned. All reported no signs of anxiety, fear, or odd behavior from Lugo in his final days. No screams, arguments, or disturbances were heard that night. Neighbors' accounts clashed with the family's claim of blood smears and struggle marks, possibly due to differing interpretations or scene tampering before the family's access. Yet unresolved contradictions linger. The family insisted on blood trails and signs of a struggle, but the task force offered no conclusion on this. While official findings lean towards suicide, the family and public suspected overlooked or suppressed details. Investigators uncovered money laundering in the hospital's kidney transplant department where Lu turned. Of the 330,000 Chinese yuan, $4,600 funneled through Lugo's account. Only $38,000 was legitimate stipend. The rest was held money. He was forced to return to department doctors. This explained the mysterious funds, but raised a darker question. Did Lu know too much, becoming a threat to a corrupt system? Authorities found no whistleblowing files folder on Lugo's recovered computer. Data, only 158 personal audio logs. The family contested this, claiming they saw over 11,000 power-printed pages. Investigators reviewed just 281 submitted pages. Suspicions of data deletion persist. If someone erased evidence, they'd need high access. Who had that power? After nearly a year, the Joint Task Force concluded Lu Shu took his own life. No evidence supported a homicide. The verdict sparked immediate outrage from his family and the public. Key questions lingered unanswered: blood trails in his room, the 25,000 Chinese yuan, $3,500 in cash he carried, and most shockingly a 15 million Chinese yuan offer. Roughly $2.1 million USD or 50 billion VND to buy the family's silence. The 15 million envelope stunned the public. If Lu's death was truly self-inflicted, why would anyone pay millions to hush his family? On October 31, 2024, Changsha's Intermediate People's Court opened. The trial of Dr. Lu Zhang, former chief physician at Shanja Hospital No. 2. Prosecutors presented damning evidence from 2010 to 2022. Lu abused his position, performing unnecessary surgeries on at least 6 patients, 5 of whom suffered permanent health damage. He also took 60,000 Chinese yuan, $90,400 in bribes from pharmaceutical companies, and embezzled medical supplies worth 1.93 million Chinese yuan, 270,200. Rust. Victims testified, their words searing. One sobbed, "I didn't have cancer, but he scared me into urgent surgery. Now I've lost 2/3 of my stomach." The courtroom fell silent, gripped by fury. Others described organs removed without medical justification, leaving them with lifelong pain and resentment. Lu's lawyer argued he only violated hospital protocols, not intending harm. The defense collapsed under the weight of evidence. The court convicted Lu of intentional injury, bribery and embezzlement, sentencing him to 17 years in prison and a 420,000 Chinese yuan, 58 out of 800 fine. Lu stood motionless, head bowed, silent. Yet, throughout the trial, Luos Shuiu's name was never mentioned. The man who first gathered evidence against Lu and sent it to authorities before his mysterious death. Outside the courthouse, Lu's parents held his portrait aloft, clutching a handwritten sign. "Don't let a good man die unjustly. Investigate Lu Shu's case." The image of two elderly white-haired parents standing silently amid the crowd, gripping their son's photo, tore at China's heartstrings online. Many commented that while Lu's trial brought justice to some, Lu's quiet sacrifice remained ignored, his name erased. After Lu's 2022 exposure, Hunan's health department disciplined 15 others at Xia Hospital No. 2. Suspensions, demotions, firings, only Lu and an accomplice, Dr. Lu Yuandang, faced criminal charges. This leniency fueled suspicions of a cover-up to shield the hospital's reputation and avoid probing sensitive issues like organ trafficking. Lu's gravest accusation pointed to illegal organ trade, yet no court or independent investigation has addressed it. Hunan authorities claimed no evidence of illegal organ transactions. But with the local police suspected of ties to vested interests handling the probe, this dismissal failed to quell public doubt. After Dr. Lu Zhang Fing trial in October 2024 exposed corruption and medical misconduct at Shanja Hospital No. 2, many hoped it would shed light on Lu Shu's death, the whistleblower who first reported Lu's crimes. Yet by mid-June 2025, Hunan authorities offered no new updates. The suicide verdict stamped as final fueled public disillusionment and rage on Weibo and major forums. Calls for a central investigation surged. Tens of thousands demanded China's Ministry of Public Security or an independent out-of-province probe, convinced that locals can't investigate themselves. Objectively, independent legal experts highlighted flaws in the initial investigation. Changsha police rushed to a suicide conclusion within hours, skipped a full forensic autopsy, and failed to properly seal the scene. Allegations surfaced that police returned Lu's belongings only if his family signed a suicide confirmation, a move sparking suspicion about the investigators' true motives. Beyond ethical breaches, Shanja Hospital No. 2 faced accusations of illegal organ trafficking. In his 2022 complaint, Lua not only exposed Lu's unnecessary surgeries and personal profiting, but hinted at irregularities in organ donations, patients dying in unclear circumstances, families left uninformed, and organs harvested within hours of death. Lu voiced fears that some surgeries and deaths were manipulated to facilitate organ harvesting. He noted patients admitted for minor injuries who suddenly died and donated multiple vital organs. He also collected a video showing a doctor ordering surgery without sufficient tests, followed by the patient being deemed suitable for donation and rushed to a transplant center the next day. Could a covered protocol have legalized harvesting organs from savable patients facing public pressure? Hunan's health department reviewed 50 related organ donation files, claiming all were legal, with family consent and proper procedures. Yet the cycle persisted, allegations unrisked, no third-party verification, and those responsible untouched. Independent lawyers warned that without external audits, independent autopsies, or transparent donation records, credibility was non-existent. Many believe Luo's bold accusations not only made enemies among colleagues, but touched a hidden power network if an organ trafficking ring existed. His sudden death, labeled suicide despite lingering questions, fueled theories of a whistleblower silenced. On Chinese social media, voices demanded the Ministry of Public Security or a special central task force investigate organ trafficking claims. They argued, if this isn't transparent, no one will dare expose medical corruption again. A human rights lawyer stated, "This isn't just one man's story. It's a test of transparency and integrity for the entire system." Yet by mid-2025, no signs pointed to a central investigation. The organ trafficking allegations remain unproven. No trials, no indictments, no prosecutions. But the whistleblower's tragedy and dozens of unanswered questions leaves the public restless on Weibo. One user wrote, "If everything was legal, why trade a life to silence the truth?" Shanja Hospital No. 2 tied to Central South University. And Hunan's government operates in a tight circle. When scandals broke, responses stayed internal. Internal discipline, internal probes, internal reports. Then case closed. Only 2 faced criminal charges while dozens of implicated staff received administrative penalties and returned to work, raising doubts about accountability. Liu is gone. But his hundreds of pages, videos and recordings quietly spread online. They haven't sparked a courtroom explosion. But they force society to question medical integrity and the treatment of whistleblowers. As more insider exposes get buried, Liu's death becomes a symbol of the cost of speaking truth. His family, especially his parents, presses on, undeterred by despair. The farmers, now over 50, plan to petition Beijing's Central Commission for Discipline Inspection, seeking a higher-level review, clinging to hope that justice still has a voice. They've held live streams, sharing case details, reading Luo's notes, and rallying community support. Each session draws hundreds of thousands of views and thousands of comments, urging their fight a grassroots oversight movement. Though the path is thorny, Liu's parents remain resolute. For them, this isn't just a lawsuit. It's a quest to reclaim truth for a son who fell for righteousness. Despite Hunan's task force closing the case with a contested report, society still seeks answers. Why would a doctoral candidate with a full scholarship and career ambitions choose such an extreme end? Why were unsent files still on Liu's phone? Would someone planning to die preserve evidence? No suicide note, no clear signs of despair. Story 6. A friendly face behind a webcam. The voice anime fans turn to for honest reviews and recommendations. Mr. Anime, a rising star in the early days of the YouTube world. But what if the boy next door, the one geeking out over anime, was also quietly plotting a massacre? This isn't just a tale of obsession gone wrong. It's a disturbing journey into a mind that once thrived behind a screen and then destroyed everything in its way. What happened when the lights turned off and the camera stopped rolling? On the quiet afternoon of Tuesday, March 20, 2012. In the small town of Waller, Texas, the Sessler home became the site of an unthinkable tragedy. One that would shock not just the local community, but ripple across the very internet fandom Trey Eric Sessler once thrived in. Before 1 p.m., Trey calmly lured his mother, Rhonda Sessler, into the garage. There, without hesitation, he raised a shotgun and fired 4 times at point-blank range. The blast was merciless that his mother collapsed to the ground. She never stood a chance. Inside the house, his father was still asleep, unaware that the first of many gunshots had just ended his wife's life. With eerie composure, Trey re-entered the house and turned his weapon on his younger brother, Mark. The first shot didn't kill him. Mark, wounded and terrified, stumbled into the bathroom and locked the door, desperately trying to escape his brother's wrath, but there would be no escape. Trey broke the door down and finished what he started, this time using a pistol to ensure Mark wouldn't survive. The commotion finally woke up his father, Leighton Sessler. Confused and alarmed, he rose, only to be met with gunfire. Trey shot him, too, completing the brutal execution of the very people who raised him, loved him, and supported his dreams. But Trey wasn't finished. After killing his entire family, he walked through the blood-stained home, scrawling messages across the walls. Haunting, heartbreaking confessions like, "I love my mom, dad, and brother, and God forgive me because I cannot forgive myself." Words soaked with guilt that came far too late. Then, as if possessed by rage or perhaps driven by some twisted need to destroy everything he once cherished, he began to tear apart the house. Furniture overturned, windows shattered, rooms left in shambles. What was once a family home became, in the words of Waller's police chief Phil Rehock, a war zone. After reducing his childhood home to rubble and silence, Trey Eric Sessler wasn't finished. Not yet. With the bodies of his family lying cold behind him, he loaded his 2010 black Ford Mustang with a Hi-Point Model 995 carbine rifle and over 100 rounds of ammunition. His next destination, Waller High School, the very place he once walked the halls as a student. Now the site he'd chosen for a massacre. He parked outside, engine cooling in the quiet hum of the afternoon. The school loomed ahead of him, innocent and unaware of the horror it had narrowly escaped. Sessler sat there in the lot, gun ready, mind reeling, but something shifted as the minutes passed. The fantasy that had festered in his mind for years suddenly collided with the chilling reality of what he had already done. The weight of his actions finally caught up to him. Trey didn't go through with the shooting. He backed out, later telling investigators that it had all just become too real. Instead of unleashing chaos at the school, he drove to a friend's home in Magnolia, Texas, possibly seeking refuge or simply a place to hide. Meanwhile, concern was growing. Friends and relatives of the Sessler family, unable to get in touch, called the police and requested a welfare check. When officers arrived at the house, what they found was a nightmare. The lifeless bodies of Trey's mother, father, and younger brother, and a home desecrated in a storm of rage and regret. An arrest warrant was issued immediately, and the manhunt began. Just hours later, at 9:30 p.m., police tracked Trey down and arrested him at the Magnolia home without resistance. During questioning, Trey offered an explanation enough to give goosebumps. He said he murdered his family because he didn't want them to be ashamed of him after the school shooting he had planned to commit. It wasn't about hate, he claimed. It was about shame. But in the end, even Trey couldn't bring himself to carry out his full plan. What he'd already done was more than enough to scar a community forever. In the days following his arrest, Trey was placed on self-harm watch. The once beloved Mr. Anime was now just Trey Sessler, the young man who annihilated the very people who loved him and nearly turned his high school into a graveyard. So, let's rewind for a second before the headlines, before the horror, before the name Trey Eric Sessler was associated with anything other than anime. Trey was born on August 3, 1989 in Waller, Texas. Small town surrounded by a quiet neighborhood, one of those places where everybody kind of knows everybody. He grew up in a pretty normal household, nothing out of the ordinary. His mom, Rhonda, worked for the Waller Times and his dad Layton was a teacher at Robinson Elementary in the Seafair School District. They'd been married for 34 years. Trey had an older brother, Mark. From the outside, they looked like a regular, tight-knit American family. But things took a turn for worse when Trey dropped out of college. Now, Trey wasn't the most popular kid in school. He went to Waller High, then later to Blind College. He wasn't topping the class or winning any popularity contests. He was more under the radar, quiet, kept to himself. But if you asked his close friends, they'd say he was really smart, kind of quirky, sure, but sweet and soft-spoken, a little offbeat, maybe. One friend even said it felt like Trey lived more in his movies than in real life. This is important because here's where things get interesting. In the early days of YouTube, when the platform was still figuring itself out, Trey created something that would give him a place and even a bit of internet fame. He became Mr. Anime. And if you were into anime back then, chances are you stumbled across one of his videos. No fancy production, no gimmicks, just Trey talking about anime. And that's what made him different. He was honest, raw, even. He didn't try to play a character or be someone he wasn't. He just talked and people listened. Hey everybody. How's it going? Mr. Anime here, and I just wanted to say that everyone's doing a great job keeping up with my channel. Everyone's doing a great job with the video responses, the comment responses, more explosive than ever. So, I just want to say keep it up. Work's been great. Got to thank everyone who's been supportive. And I will see you soon for a new anime review. He teamed up with other creators like Megas1 and Als Anime Reviews, and together they helped shape this whole online anime subculture. Before it was even a real thing, Trey wasn't just some guy with a webcam. He became a kind of voice for people who loved anime but didn't really see it represented anywhere else. For a lot of fans, Mr. Anime felt like a friend. But behind that online persona, something darker was brewing. If you go back and watch Trey Eric Sessler's YouTube videos now, knowing what we know, they feel different, almost eerie, like you're watching someone slowly unravel right in front of the camera. And no one realized it at the time. On the surface, Mr. Anime came across as chill, quirky, maybe a little awkward, but harmless. He posted regularly, had a loyal fan base, and seemed genuinely excited about his interests. On Facebook, he introduced himself in the most casual, wholesome way. I'm Trey, no nicknames, or anything. I like to take it easy and have a nice time. I'm really interested in my education as a college student. My car is currently the most exciting part of my days. He even mentioned planting peppers and strawberries in the spring. Just a regular young guy, right? But if you watched closely, there were cracks and they were starting to show. He was never shy about his growing fascination with guns. In fact, they were featured often in his videos. Sometimes for humor, sometimes for show. There's one intro where he kicks open a door with a pistol in each hand and fake shoots himself using a jump cut. Then he smiles, gives a thumbs up, and rolls into a review. In another video, he holds up a rifle with a flashlight attachment and casually says, "Well, get your rifle ready because today I'm going to review the zombie epic High School of the Dead." And then there's a video of him out under a bridge firing a high .9mm rifle at some bottles, just him and his gun and the sound of bullets echoing into the distance. He opens the video with an unsettling greeting. "Okay, so there's this old couch always under this bridge. I don't know who put it here. Just a really old couch. That's all it is. Basically, what I'm going to do is, and this is pretty childish and ridiculous, is blow up the couch to the best of my 9mm abilities. So, let's see what we can do." The guy who does all the gun stuff now. He said it like a joke, but it wasn't. Even his health updates took a dark turn. In December 2011, he posted a video titled, "Very Bad News. Please watch." "Hi everybody, it's Trey here, aka Mr. Anime. And I guess I'm just going to cut right to the chase. No, I'm not quitting YouTube. That's what some of you guys are thinking. But I've had a little bit of shortness of breath lately and a little bit of back pain and stuff. And I haven't been sleeping too well. My eyes are a little swollen. That's why I'm wearing these sunshades. And it seems like I've got the diagnosis of pneumothorax. Basically, I'm leaking air from my lungs." He wore sunglasses and quietly announced that he'd been diagnosed with a collapsed lung. Then in a softer moment, he added, "If you're religious, I'd appreciate it if you prayed for me. I'm hoping that this is just going to be a minor deal. And that I'm not leaking that much air out of my lungs, but it could be a big deal, but I don't want to raise a red flag and be negative about it." It was uploaded just a month before the murders titled "Mr. Anime is planning something." He didn't go into detail. He didn't explain. All he said was, "Everything is going really good. I'm going to take a 2 or 3 week break. Might do some blog videos. Thanks for watching." It sounded like nothing. Just another content creator stepping back for a bit. But knowing what we know now, that line hits differently. Mr. Anime is planning something. And he was. As investigators peeled back the layers of Trey Eric Sessler's life, a darker, more disturbing picture began to emerge, one that went far beyond anime videos and internet fame. It turns out Trey had been obsessed with mass shootings. Authorities discovered he had extensively studied some of the deadliest attacks in U.S. history. Colini, Virginia Tech, you name it, he had read about it. He didn't just look them up in passing. He analyzed them, studied them. He even created a bizarre ranking system, grading at least 8 serial killers like it was some twisted hobby. And that obsession didn't stop at research. Trey admitted to some chilling behaviors leading up to the murders. Things no one saw in his YouTube reviews. He had been killing animals, including family pets, and firing shots near schools in the dead of night, quietly rehearsing his own version of the violence he consumed. Yet, despite all that, he had no criminal record. On paper, he was clean. But behind closed doors, it was a different story. After the murders, Trey was immediately placed on suicide watch. Authorities didn't know what had finally pushed him over the edge, but there were signs, clear ones. Psychologists watching the case unfold, like Dr. Gail Gross said it, pointed to a serious mental break. While she never evaluated Trey personally, she recognized the pattern. A slow burning descent into isolation and detachment. Even his own family had noticed something was off. His great-aunt Way of Frierson said he started acting like he didn't even recognize his own relatives. He almost acted like he didn't know us, she recalled. He had been under some form of treatment, but no one really knew for what. Trey was 22 years old. He had never held a full-time job, rarely left the house, and spent hours upon hours behind a screen, reading about killers, watching violent footage, planning. According to investigators, he had been preparing for years. In his grandmother's yard, news crews later found a small grave marked with the words, "Forgive me." That same phrase showed up inside his family's home after the massacre. It was like Trey knew exactly what he was doing and hated himself for it. But even that guilt didn't stop him. Dr. Gross summed it up chillingly. When people have psychic breaks, when they split like that, this is what happens. She believes Trey had shown red flags for years and that more people should have stepped in. His isolation, his spiraling obsession, the mental strain, it all built up. And in the absence of real intervention, Trey grabbed control in the only way he knew how, by destroying everything. In August of 2012, 5 months after the murders, Trey Eric Sessler stood before the court and pleaded guilty to killing his mother, father, and brother. No trial, no drawn-out legal battle, just a quiet admission from a man who had shattered his entire world. The sentence was life in prison, with no possibility of parole. I did that. I was like, well, I'm already committed. Really, I can't really go to my brother and my dad and be like, yeah, I just killed my mom. Even if there was no chaos in the courtroom since he admitted to his crimes, the outside world was not so quiet. Word of the sentencing spread fast through Waller. And while some people felt justice had finally been served, others weren't satisfied. Many believed Trey had earned something far harsher, especially considering how methodically he planned everything. This wasn't a heat of the moment crime. It was premeditated. It was cold. And it was calculated. Death penalty definitely, said Logan Peavy, a local resident. It had to have been premeditated. He's crazy. Another local, Stanton Ashley, put it simply. People are going to be happy that justice is served, but they're not going to be happy with how it's served. Even within Trey's own extended family, there was heartbreak and a deep lingering pain. Some family members spoke privately about how his actions had torn apart more than just a household. He fractured a community, but when approached for public comment, they declined. Maybe because the wounds were still too raw. Or maybe because there are no words for what he did. Since his arrest, Trey has been held at the Waller County Jail, but not for long. According to the district attorney, he'll soon be transferred to Huntsville, Texas, where he'll be processed and assigned to a permanent prison. And that's where he'll spend the rest of his life, behind bars, cut off from the world he once entertained, the family he destroyed, and the school he nearly turned into a battleground. The boy, once known as Mr. Anime, is now just inmate Trey Sessler. To truly understand the depth of Trey Eric Sessler's descent, you have to look beyond his home, his YouTube channel, and even beyond Waller, Texas. You have to go back to April 20, 1999 in Colini. The day two high school seniors, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebald, walked into their school in Colorado, opened fire, and changed America forever. They killed 13 people and wounded over 20 others before turning their guns on themselves. But the horror didn't end when the gunshots stopped. You might think that the shooting ended with lives lost and lifelong regrets. But no. In the years that followed, Colini gave birth to something more sinister than anyone could have imagined, a phenomenon now known as the Colini effect. It was no longer about school shootings. It was now about the culture that formed around them. Harris and Klebald, once seen as troubled teens, became twisted icons in certain corners of the internet. They were analyzed, quoted, studied like cult figures by a growing community of disillusioned and disturbed individuals. Forums, blogs, and even fan pages emerged, turning mass murderers into dark anti-heroes. Some were fascinated by their motives. Others wanted to be just like them. And so came the copycats, young men mostly, who idolized the Colini shooters and wanted to follow in their footsteps. We saw it in Song Hai-cho, who killed 32 people at Virginia Tech in 2007. He referenced Colini in his videos and writings, calling the shooters martyrs. We saw it in Alec Manascian, the Toronto van attacker who was inspired by online subcultures glorifying violence. Even the 2018 Parkland shooter, Nicholas Cruz, posted online about his obsession with school shooters, mimicking the same kind of language Harris and Klebald used. And then there was Trey Eric Sessler. Trey didn't just stumble upon these stories. He was devoted to them. He studied Colini and Virginia Tech extensively. He researched serial killers. He made lists, ranking them. He watched violent footage, took notes, and built fantasies. According to investigators, this wasn't just a passing interest. This was part of his identity. He was planning something for years, and he admitted it himself. He said he wanted to commit a mass shooting at his former high school. He killed his family first, either to spare them from shame or to silence them as witnesses, then drove to the school with hundreds of rounds of ammunition. He sat in the parking lot, prepared, ready. But something stopped him. Maybe it was fear, maybe guilt. Maybe the weight of reality crashing into his twisted fantasy. Whatever it was, he backed out. But that doesn't erase what he intended to do. Trey, like so many before him, was walking in the bloody footsteps of Colini, where murder was not just a crime, but a path to infamy. This is the terrifying power of the Collini effect. It glamorizes violence for those who feel voiceless, invisible, or enraged. It doesn't just inspire violence. It turns it into a blueprint. Trey Sessler might have been just another quiet, lonely guy reviewing anime on YouTube. But under the surface, he was absorbing a narrative that had already captured too many lost minds before him. And in the end, even if he didn't pull the trigger at that school, he still became part of the legacy that Collini left behind. A legacy not of rebellion, but of tragedy, mimicry, and destruction. And the question that still lingers over Waller, Texas, years later, isn't just why he did it. As the rain gently falls and the night grows deeper, thank you for joining me here at Mr. Nightcared. True crime stories remind us of life's mysteries and the importance of staying aware, even as we seek comfort in the quiet of the night. Let the rain carry you to a peaceful sleep. And until we meet again, stay safe, stay curious, and let the night watch over you.